All right, I will call the meeting to order. Welcome everyone to our Williamsport City Council meeting. It is Thursday, December 7th, 2023. We're in Trade Transit 2, third floor. Please rise for the invocation by Councilman Eric Biter, followed by the flag salute.
Today, on December 7th, I ask that we all take a moment and reflect internally to remember Pearl Harbor, which happened 82 years ago today, and the roughly 2,400 souls that were lost in the attack. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Item 3, approval of city council meeting minutes from November 9th, 2023, budget work session number 1 from November 13th, and budget session number 2 from November 15th, 2023. Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on the minutes? Hearing seen none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for the minutes.
Mr. Allison.
Yeah.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Vita,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 4, limited courtesy of the floor. We've had one request tonight. I'll welcome Mr. Scott Miller to the podium, 822 Tucker Street. Welcome, sir, and you'll have 3 minutes at the podium.
I'll read as fast as I can.
That's all good, and we appreciate that. Just make sure that your microphone is on. I don't think that it's on. Just push the button. Excellent.
Hello.
Thank you very much. Welcome, sir.
I'm glad to see the fourth estate is protecting the mayor and city council from the truth. One mill tax increase used to be $867,000. When did it become only $800,000? Did the city lose $67 million of taxable real estate? I see the city council and the mayor are chomping at the bit to raise taxes. Thank goodness Williamsport got $25 million from the federal government last year, but where did all that money go? Did the city reimburse itself for expenses we had paid within allowable guidelines? And when is this never-ending audit going to wrap up? For all the mudslinging, I still haven't heard a word about what Bill Nichols or Joe Pollack did illegally. Sounds like a smear campaign to me. Further, when are we going to return to a 55-man police force? Did we run out of crime? $100,000 more for streets? I thought oil prices came back down since last year. A few years ago, Grove Street was milled and repaved from Washington Boulevard to Sheridan Street, 5 blocks. Only 2 needed it. I called Bonnie when I saw it in the paper and said so. I drive on that street, so it did not need repaving. Why am I paying for the mayor's car? City Hall, about a decade ago when Bill Hall was on city council, he rhetorically asked what the plans for the city hall were. Bill asked this because in discussing a partial roof replacement, adding that we also needed other repairs and upgrades at the time. Liz, Randy, and Bonnie were all on city council then. What did those 3 do to protect City Hall? Did they add the line item to the budget? Personally, I think the city hall should not be sold. And if it is, exactly what are our plans moving forward? Location, costs? How about telling us citizens before City Hall is sold? Why can't we use the American Rescue Plan money for historical preservation? And also Stevens Elementary was sold for $875,000. That could have been bought and used for city office. Full speed ahead. Damn the taxpayers. Thank you. Did I keep it under 3 minutes?
Yes, sir. Thank you very much, sir. Okay, we will move to item 5. We have an appointment for the James V. Brown Library Board. Dr. Brooke Biter of 600 Highland Terrace of Williamsport is here for a 2-year term commencing today. and ending in 2 years, December 7th, 2025. Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Dr. Biter's here if anybody has any questions. I think most of us know Dr. Biter, but a quick little note about the process. So this was filled by, I believe, Tricia Marty, and she decided to step down to pursue some other interests. Their nominating committee did a search and selected Dr. Biter and recommended her to City Council. This is a City Council appointment. They sent over her credentials. She's very involved in our community. Her professional life and education with the last intermediate unit, I think speaks for itself. And again, Dr. Biter, she is immensely qualified for this position. And I think the little bit that I know her, very, very passionate about our education system, our youth. And I think that there's a lot that can be done. She's going to bring to the library board specifically. So just a quick little tidbit on kind of the background as to how we got here. A little bit about Dr. Biter's background, her qualifications. I think everybody has them and has had them for a little bit here. But I'll open the floor to any questions or comments from members of council. And as I said, Dr. Biter's in the back if anybody has any questions. Mr. Allison.
I don't have any questions, but Dr. Biter's back there and John Comfer, former city councilman, is there as well. And I think that speaks to both of them, speak to the point that our library is in good hands. And thank you for stepping up, Dr. Biter. And John, you've been there for a while. Thank you for your leadership.
Here, here. Any other comments or questions relating to Dr. Biter's nomination for the library board? Mr. Biter.
If I may, even though she does have immense qualifications for obvious reasons, I do just want to say for public record that I will be abstaining from this particular vote. But I would like to say congratulations to her on that appointment. Considering her role at Blast, IU-17, with her involvement in 19 different school districts throughout 4 counties, and again, her involvement with education over the past 17 years, I couldn't think of anybody more qualified to fill that position at the James V. Brown.
I'll second all of that. I'll admit I didn't know a lot about the intermediate units in the state. There's a colleague of mine in my DBA cohort who works for Chester County's intermediate unit, and I've learned a lot about what they do, the role they provide. And so forgive my ignorance, but my point is it's only made me come to, I think, respect the work that you do. And I think the value that you bring to this position and board. So any other comments or questions? All right, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion for the nomination for the James V. Brown Library Board.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Biter,
Abstain.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 6-0 with 1 abstention. Dr. Biter, congratulations. And again, thank you for stepping up for your service, and really excited to see you get involved there. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to jump around to the bottom 2 items here really quickly. We'll go to item 16, subdivision for 518 Memorial Avenue. Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion in a second. Mr. Nar, good evening, sir.
Good evening, President Yoder, members of council. What I present to you tonight is a request for a 1-lot subdivision. The property owner is Danco Holding LP to have a 1-lot subdivided with the residual. Lot number 1 obviously is going to contain little over 6 acres. Those 6 acres will be added on to the lot north of it, which actually will fall within Loyalsock Township. The residual will have the house on it and obviously will have 3.37 acres. It was reviewed by county as well as the planning commission, and both gave positive recommendations. I can answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Nar. Any comments or questions from members of council? Mr. Bider.
If you can just clarify, so are we going to be losing this property then to Loyalsock Township?
We are going to be losing the majority of the acreage to Loyalsock, correct? It's all wooded, it's all wooded and undeveloped area. We will keep the residual, which is 3.367 acres.
Would they like to make a trade of any other parcels that are adjacent to the city?
No, I think they're happy to get this.
Fair.
Any other comments or questions? Mrs. Katz.
Gary, are they going to be able to build something on this?
There's already a home on the residual that we keep currently has an existing home and property and has everything on, correct?
Okay, so they're going to utilize this
Yeah,
thing.
it'll be
So to
continued to be
increase their
utilized,
tax base.
correct?
Okay,
They need the money.
yeah, I know.
Plenty of time for that rabbit hole. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 16, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Move to item 17, Mrs. Frank.
That's
That's a
Subdivision.
subdivision. Yeah, sorry. My bad. 931 Upland Road. Is there a motion in a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion in a second. So,
I believe item 17 was.
Did we do them out of order? I'm sorry.
931 Upland Road. We just covered 931 Upland Road.
oh, sorry. I thought we were doing 16.
Yep, that's
I
15.
think, yeah, that was my mistake.
It's okay. So we did 17.
We
We'll
did
do-
17.
We'll do 16 now. It's all good.
What I have.
Mr. Nar.
What I-
I just wondered.
What I
Good
have
one.
before you is the property at 1518 Memorial Ave. This property originally went through planning last month. The previous owner, Cheryl Grugan, had requested the subdivision. She owned both of the parcels. Was requesting a small subdivision. And prior to it going, obviously coming to council, she passed away. So basically, we're bringing it back before everyone with the different owners, which will be her granddaughters. Basically, what she had done is she'd asked for a one lot subdivision containing 1,933 square feet. That will be basically added on to the parcel to the west of that. And what that merely does is allows the one daughter to have complete and full access of the driveway that's through there. And again, she tried to do it obviously prior to her passing, but it didn't happen. This did go through both county for review as well as planning with positive recommendation.
Thank you, Mr. Nar. Any comments or questions? Okay. Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 16.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Gary, thank you both for both of those very much. We're going to jump to item 15 then quick, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution authorizing execution of agreement between City of Williamsport and Evolve LLC.
Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion in a second. Mayor Slaughter, good evening, sir.
Yes, good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council administration. What you have before you for your consideration is a resolution to approve Evolve as our contractor to do our parks and rec, green space comprehensive plan update. We've talked about this in the past. We did receive a grant from DCNR related to this. And as part of that grant, we were required to do RFPs. We had to have a committee from the public formed. We've done all of that, and the committee's recommendation to the administration, which is before you, is to move forward with Evolve. It would be probably a 12-month or so process to update our comp plan. It's pretty thorough. It's very involved, including stakeholders, administration, city council, everyone in the community to provide input. And then as we update across the whole city, all of our parks, rec, green space, open space and green infrastructure plan. This was reviewed in finance, and we do have folks online from Evolve, and we do have a member in the audience from the committee that was formed, if there are questions for any of them.
Thank you, Mayor Slaughter. This went to finance, I believe. Ms. Mealy?
Miss Mealy picked the wrong time to eat a sweet. I apologize. This, yes, this did go to finance and a member of, or excuse me, no, a member of the committee was present at finance. No one from Evolve. But the city, obviously, we've all seen in our budget packets that we are funding a portion of this study, and that it was recommended by DCNR in part to make us, not only because it is good to have a comprehensive study of your recreational offerings done, but also because it will help to make us eligible for further DCNR funding when the recommendations from the study do come through. All in all, this is pretty exciting, as the mayor noted. On finance, we did a partial study with CEDACOG, an evaluation of just our neighborhood parks in 2005. But that's the last real study that we have of the city's recreational offerings, and it was not a complete study. So this will be much more comprehensive. I would, however, recommend, given that no one from Evolve was present at the finance meeting, that perhaps we should ask them for a brief summary of their plan and execution and timeline.
They're on.
Sure. Who do we have from Evolve?
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me?
Yes, welcome.
Okay, great. Welcome. Thank you. My name is Christine Mondor, and I'm principal at Evolve Environment Architecture. And just a little background on us. We are located in Pittsburgh, but we work across the Northeast and actually across the country. We are a design and planning firm. And right now we're working on a similar process for the city of Lancaster and the city of Harrisburg, both with the same kinds of contract stipulations and goals to be able to qualify for additional DCNR funding. If you can hold 1 minute, I'm going to try to do some screen management here. Yeah, a little bit of background on us, on the proposal. The process, a typical process for these types of projects is for us to come on site, do a series of stakeholder meetings to look at and visit every park that you have, and then to do an assessment, a quantitative assessment on the conditions of the park, the offerings and the policies that you have, and then to do public meetings that begin to get at what some of the goals and the visions and aspirations of the community are, as well as any shortcomings or gaps that we need to address. And so we are teamed with Connected Dots and McCormick Taylor, who help us both with the engineering, civil engineering side, as well as engagement, and have worked with them in the past. Our past experience, like I mentioned, working on similar plans, but we've also done implementation plans for parks. We've done trail system planning and green infrastructure, 2 citywide plans for the city of Buffalo and the city of Pittsburgh. So we bring all that together, as well as community development experience, to kind of look and see not just what condition the parks are in, but what is their connection to the community, how we can connect the parks themselves, how we can think more systemically about your green space. And so you asked about the schedule, I believe, as well. And we have in our proposal an 18-month schedule, with the first phase. There's the longest phase because that's listening and learning, and that's a 7 to 8 month phase. We do ideating and testing for about 5 months, and then we refine those kinds of ideas into a singular set of recommendations for about 3 months. And then the launch is really creating the document, the final document, and working with you closely so that you can take it to the public and your funders and others. So we're really excited to work with you all. And I have to say, we were really inspired in the interview with the way that the mayor and others spoke about your park system and your love for it. So we're excited to get to know you.
Thank you very much. Any? Go ahead. Did you?
I was just going to add one thing that actually we failed to mention at finance on Tuesday. And at the one conference I was at, made a connection with Trust for Public Land. And they actually this fall gave us a free sort of report that Evolve will be able to take with them as well on just the parks that we have, amenities, and the 10-minute walk program, which says that every resident has a 10-minute or less walk to a quality park. And so we have that heat map. We have the work that Trust for Public Land did actually free of charge for us. And so that's sort of a good starting point for us all to finalize a report. They'll send it out. Of course, I'll send that to council and to Evolve and everyone. So that was just a little sort of intro that I forgot to mention Tuesday. So we do have that right now. So we will have that. So as a start, and that was just for free, meeting with Trust for Public Land at the one conference. So anyway, sorry, I forgot to mention that on Tuesday.
Thank you, Mayor Slaughter. Ms. Mealy.
Out of curiosity, Mayor, how many areas did we have that were more than 10 minutes of walk? From the
So
public
actually,
park?
almost our whole city is within a 10-minute walk to a park, except for Grampian Hills area. That was basically the only section that was a little more than 10 minutes because they're going to Shaw Park,
Yeah,
which is provided more. But rest of the area was, the rest of the city was pretty close. And so I think pretty much our entire community, particularly the underserved areas, had a 10-minute or less walk. So I will send that out, of course, to all of you once it's done. So
and that puts us closer to being in reach too for the whole idea of a 15-minute city, you know, everything being within a 15-minute walk or a bus ride if you're
Right.
where you live. That's great. All right. The one thing that we didn't discuss, we actually did discuss Graphius Run on Tuesday, but we didn't discuss it in the context of this. Is that part of the scope that we've provided for Evolve? Can that be part of the scope that we've provided
Yep.
for Evolve?
So that did come up, and we do have Fief here from the committee as well, that she could add and Evolve can speak to this too. But yes, we did, that did come up during the interviews, and it can be something that they look at as far as water infrastructure and different things and how that plays into our park and green space and open space infrastructure. So
Right.
yes.
I'm assuming, is Cochran Park, is that considered a city green space? Will they be looking at that as a city asset because it's a school district?
Yeah, I don't know if they'll look at it as this, but it can be part of it. I think
Okay.
we can look
Just
at it,
curious,
yes.
because it
Yeah.
seems like that should kind of get folded into it. Definitely is a recreational amenity within the
Right.
city, despite the fact that it's
Exactly.
not city owned.
And obviously part of Graphius. So,
Right, well,
yeah.
yeah, exactly.
clearly.
That's key there.
So yes, I think they could do that.
Got it. Anyway, a handful of minor notes. This is a not to exceed contract, although it does not say that in the resolution. And the not to exceed amount is 138,000 and X. I don't remember 979 or something.
Right.
So we do have a cap on the amount that we're expecting to expend here. But no cap on our expectations, I think, for what we'll hope to get from it. And which is always a good situation to be in. And I think every member of the finance committee seemed to agree with the mayor and with feedback that this is an exceptional opportunity for the city to really get a sense of what we have and what we need to make what we have more accessible to our citizens. So we're fortunate that we can undertake this with the help of the state. Thanks, Adam.
Any comments or questions? Sorry. Mr. Mackey, Mr. Pelisi. Mr. Mackey.
Very minor note. If sorry, if this packet was prepared specifically for us. But yeah, this appears to be a picture of Northumberland on the cover, not Williamsport. Just a minor note.
Right.
Just a minor note.
Mr. Pelisi.
Thank you. For the record, I thought the illustration was great. No, my question is, and to Councilwoman Mealy's point, so we received a grant for this, and the grant is covering the entire cost of it? No? Because I saw that the number, Liz, that you were looking for was $139,940.38.
Right. And I think we've got, we're
It's
paying
50/50,
half,
yeah,
correct?
so it's 70/70. State's paying 70, we have 70 in Act 13
Mhm.
Okay,
to cover, yeah.
okay. And the purpose of this study is so we could be eligible for funding from DCNR in the future?
They actually recommended it. So our current one that Councilwoman Mealy referenced from 2005, DCNR said they don't accept it anymore. So if they see a comp plan, it makes us eligible for additional ones, and they don't accept our current one because it's too old. So it was their recommendation actually that we bring this forward.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Bider.
I just want to take an opportunity to thank DCNR for their
Mhm.
continued involvement in the city. They've spent a lot of money in the city of Williamsport over the past 4 years, and to them, I'd like to say thank you very much. On the note of Evolve, I was cruising around their website earlier in the week, and some of their information that they have is absolutely fascinating. And then they're creating a living city master plan that they've demonstrated for other communities is remarkable, what they've been able to do. So I think this is a great way to continue to capitalize on that relationship with DCNR. So thank you for that. I do appreciate it.
Any other comments or questions? Okay. Here you see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion for item 15, please.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Sorry, I made a mistake on my notes here. Okay, we'll hit the rest here in order. We'll save the fun for last. Item 6, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance transfer ordinance number 5 in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mr. Livermore or Mr. Mayor? Okay, Mr. Livermore. It's like, no, he's like, I was just up there. I'm good. Just kidding. Mr. Livermore, good evening, sir.
Good evening, members of council. This was discussed in last week's meeting. Nothing really further to add.
Any comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 7, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance transfer ordinance number 6 in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second, Mr. Livermore. Same thing.
Yeah, same thing.
This is the general fund transfer, right?
Yeah, for 2,600.
I believe so.
Yep. Yep.
So the thing that I didn't get to catch you before this, so you were mentioning about your need for another transfer for,
The
We could-
cross,
we could do it here. Is what I'm saying. So what I would suggest, maybe does this need to be done tomorrow?
Mm-mm.
So we'll table this, send us your transfers that you need to do for your bill payment.
Yeah.
And then we can amend it and then it's done
on
next
item
week.
6.
Yeah.
It's not done.
What's that?
It's not done until January.
Well, yeah, I
But
get
yeah.
that. Yeah, I get that. Yeah, so what Scott was saying, Scott realized that he needs to do a transfer of funding to pay a couple of back bills.
Right.
He was gonna introduce that next week.
Mhm.
What I told him was we could do a couple of different things, but it occurred to me, we can just amend this in second reading next week.
Oh, amended in second reading.
Yeah, if we table this, get a look at what you're looking at
Mhm.
and then amend this next week. That
Okay.
way the reading's done.
Yep.
And then in January, you're good to go.
All right, yeah.
I mean, is that okay?
All right,
I'm thinking about which reading we were doing.
the $2,600 one. Yeah. No.
Does that work for you?
Yep.
Cool. Sorry, I was sitting here thinking, I was
Yeah,
like,
no,
oh,
that's fine.
yeah, we could do that. All right, is there any other comments or questions? Is there a motion, a second to table?
So moved.
Second. Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions on tabling? Mrs. Frank on the motion to table item 7.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to table passes 7-0. Thanks, Scott. Hope that works. That helps. Okay. Item 8, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance transfer ordinance number 7 in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Mayor Slaughter, welcome back.
Yes, good evening. What you have before you, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, what you have before you is the ordinance in second reading, ordinance number 7. Nothing has changed since the first reading.
Any comments or questions? This is for
Tracy.
audits.
The-
Oh, this is
that
for
you're-
audits,
yeah.
okay. Sorry, I was mixing up. I missed the last meeting when these first readings happened, so I'm playing a little bit of catch up on this. Okay. Any comments or questions? Sorry. Is that? No, I have it here. I couldn't remember if this was audits or if this was tasers.
Okay.
Yeah, this is the
Um,
audits, yeah.
Cool. All right, no other comments or questions. When will we be seeing a contract for this? Next week? Your current contract with us, I believe, runs out at the end of the year. And this is work's going to run into.
No, she's going to finish this up.
By the
Her,
end of the
her
year?
part of it.
By the end of 2023,
That's on the record.
on the record. So we can get a report in our first finance committee meeting of January. Okay,
Awesome.
awesome. Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll move to item 9.
An ordinance transfer ordinance number 8 in final reading.
Is there a motion and a second? So moved. Second. Motion and a second. Mayor Slaughter.
Yes, good evening again, President Yoder, Vice President Katz. You have before you is transfer ordinance number 8. This actually goes along with the resolution that you approved earlier in the year for the Act 13 update from the county. This creates it on our side of things, an ordinance to actually show it on the budgeted side. And nothing has changed from first reading.
Any comments or questions? Hearing see none, Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey.
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi.
Yes.
Mr. Bider.
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 10, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance transfer ordinance number 9 in first reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second. Assistant Chief Bolt, welcome, sir.
Thank you, sir. Council President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council. This is transfer ordinance to assist with purchase of taser systems for the Williamsport Bureau of Police. We did discuss this in finance. It was to utilize Act 13 funding to pay for this. However, I do believe there was some discussion about alternative. So, and I will open it for any questions.
Ms. Mealy.
Okay, so a couple of details. Apparently, we have 2 editions of tasers operating within the police department and or potentially failing to operate within the police department. One of which dates to 2011, the other of which dates to 2015, give or take.
Actually, I believe I may have misspoke when I said that. Our current edition, the newest ones are from 2011. The other ones predate that.
Okay. So, and tasers, generally speaking, have a shelf life of 5 or 6 years.
Correct.
So these are all relatively antiquated enough that they are no longer supported because the versions have timed out. So we have $300,000 for the purchase of new tasers budgeted in our capital projects fund. However, that money is not scheduled to be expended until 2025. Which is to say that we are about $100,000 shy of the money we would need to make that purchase in the capital projects fund this year. Because the tasers are no longer supported, the police would like to move forward with purchasing them prior to 2025, which would then push back the next purchase date to approximately 2028, 2029 within the capital projects budget. And potentially reduce our contribution for the next 5 years from $50,000 a year for new tasers to 20. Or we could obviously continue putting in 50 because we're attempting to act fast on this transfer ordinance in part to utilize a price point that we're not certain we'll be able to get after the first of the year. And that price point is $300,000. So more than likely when in another 5 years, when we have to purchase tasers again, it will be more than $300,000.
Okay.
But most of the discussion in the finance committee actually revolved around the fact that Act 13 funding is available for most of the same uses, and in fact, some additional uses than that we can use ARPA funding for. And because our ARPA funding will be sunsetting at the end of 2025, I made the suggestion that it might be wise for us to take this from ARPA and leave the funding in Act 13 if we feel that it is a necessary purchase to make before the end of the year, leaving us the money that is most available for the longest period of time and has greater flexibility to utilize for another purchase. I believe that was the entirety of the discussion at finance, but I'll defer to the other members of the finance committee because I may have forgotten something.
Other members of the finance committee?
Basically, that's it.
Okay. Any other comments or questions? That was one of mine was gonna be, is this an ARPA eligible thing? I think that might be a little tricky with the timing of the price and everything, but you know, we've got another reading for next week. So between now and then, I think it's definitely worth looking at that. You know, part of what we were looking at and have been talking about amongst ourselves with the capital projects in general is looking at spending ARPA money with that next year anyway, as well, to try to burn through some of it, but then also kind of, I think, build up a little bit more into capital projects anyway. So I think it's something we should have to look at for sure. Mrs. Katz, you had a question.
How many tasers are there?
Currently in service,
Well, how many is the 300,000 going to purchase?
it should be purchased for all of our officers, 51 officers plus, I
51.
believe, and
So each officer
one,
gets-
every officer should be issued one, yes, correct.
And the shelf.
And one additional in case
Yes.
one goes out for repair.
I'll go through my business. The shelf life is only 5 years.
Correct. Effective life for
So
those is
we-
5 years.
So most of our officers really don't have anything that's really working well then.
All of our officers have older technology
But we
currently.
don't want the public to know that. But they are, you know, our objective is that we make sure that the police department is well,
Equipped.
they get everything that they need
Mhm.
to do what they need to do.
Correct.
And you answered my question that to go through this with ARPA, which should be much better and keep it than Act 13, which we have more flexibility with Act 13 than we do with ARPA.
Right. I think we have at least the same amount of flexibility with Act 13 as we have with ARPA, and Act 13 will not be expiring. So
Right.
the money continues to be there for
Yeah,
us for as long
Which
as
I
we
think
want.
is much
Right.
better. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? See if we can figure out between now and next week. Okay, Mrs. Franklin, the motion for item 10.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll do item 11, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance amending Article 151 of the codified ordinances, removing members of city council from participation in the officers and employee pension plan.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion and a second. So this is removing council from participation in the pension plan. As we openly discussed when we went through salaries for elected officials over the next 4 years, we adjusted the compensation for members of city council. So we changed the base pay rate starting in 2026. And we openly said we will not be funding health insurance for members of council, and we will not be participating in the pension plan for members of council. Since then, it was brought to our attention that given that a handful of members are technically vested, we have to kind of change around the ordinance a little, or the law a little bit to accommodate that. So we're kind of transitioning, so to speak. A couple people are gonna participate because they're vested. A couple people are not. And that's essentially what this does. This cleans this up. Norm drafted this after some confirmation verbiage, et cetera, from Tracy or Mackinac, excuse me. Am I missing something, Tracy? Okay. And I know there was some recent back and forth this week as well. I think we have the appropriate language accommodated here. But that's the basis of this. This was reviewed in finance. Liz, sorry, I could not make it. I've got a class Tuesday afternoons. I'm not sure if there was.
How many of your meetings do I make?
Touche.
Right.
Most of them, actually.
Well,
This is the only one that I
This
run,
is
so
true. Yes,
there you
don't
go.
have that many meetings, but anyway.
Just kidding.
Right. So,
But anyway, I don't know if there was any additional conversation on this in finance.
no. At the finance committee meeting, most of the conversation about this item revolved around the fact that we didn't have a current draft of the document because we were still working out the verbiage for how to accomplish the goal that we were looking to accomplish. And I believe this language that we have in front of us now today is actually vetted by all the appropriate people, correct? Mock and Hop, our solicitor, and the labor attorney. Hey, we got them all. So we will hopefully not run afoul of any laws and or unions in the passing of this ordinance. There will be, however, another amendment to this ordinance coming to us in the new year. We were initially kind of ganging together two different changes, only one of which really has to happen before year end, which is the one that somehow or another splits out Randy and I and from the pack. Tracy, quick question. We did establish that Bonnie. Okay. I mean, the language would go either way, right? So.
Right, it because it's based on a date. So if
Okay.
you're vested as of that date, you're vested, and if not, you're out of the
Okay.
plan.
And you're vested as January 2026.
Right, as of January 1st, 2026, that date changed back from what we talked about at finance because I was told it was 2024 at that time.
Yeah.
So Bonnie
So
will
it
be
was
vested.
changed back to
Yep.
2026.
So there will be three of us vested as of 2026.
Yeah.
And we're not
No,
making.
no.
Yeah. You're gonna get your few bucks a month too.
Well,
Bonnie.
and I mean, that's what
Hey,
we
that's
talked
okay, Bonnie.
about.
I'm retirement age, so thanks. Anyway. But anyway, yeah, that was the only question which Derek actually brought up was whether or not Bonnie was included in that. And it sort of depended on what the final date was for determining it. And Bonnie will be well included if 2026 is our target there. So.
Okay. Any other comments or questions?
No, we have naming rights.
Okay. Here you see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. All right, now the fun begins. We'll move to item 12, Mrs. Frank. Is that-
Okay.
Yeah, we'll get it.
Ordinance adopting various operating budgets for the city of Williamsport, including the general fund, emergency and reserve fund, capital projects fund, city hall operating fund, liquid fuels fund, debit service fund, and Act 13 in first reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mayor Slaughter. You're welcome to kick things off. If you need to, whatever you need to do.
Good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz. What you have before you is budget, and obviously the administration is here. We can answer questions and do our budget business the way we normally do.
Thank you, Mayor Slaughter. So we do this every year. We're required by law to do this at this time. So this is the operating budget for 2024, in addition to a number of different funds that we use to do various things amongst the city and provide services to our constituents. This was proposed beginning of last month by the administration for the third-class optional charter law. We had 2 review sessions to kind of go through, ask questions, digest this as we normally do. And now here we are. I think we've all been kind of chatting about a number of things related to this. And I think there's a number of different changes that we will want to make for a couple of different reasons. So we've openly talked about this for the past couple of years. We have some rescue plan funding available. We need to have it allocated and contracts in hand, so to speak, by the end of next year. And I think we're having a little bit more left than what we expected. And so I think we want to use that to fund some of these things in the general fund specifically. But there's some additional changes I think that we're going to probably combination of talk about, make. But the reason we, I think, want to do that is we're looking at a proposed tax increase that is a 1 mil tax increase. And I think we all have a number of different opinions and approaches to what we think is the right thing to do here. But I think, we all generally agree we're kind of in a really precarious position, right? We all hear it all the time. We can't afford the taxes in the city, et cetera, et cetera. And especially coming out of the pandemic, and over the past couple of years specifically, we've really also felt the financial crunch that we are continually under. And I think that we've all kind of recognized that without some really big, substantial changes, some of which are within our control, but a number of which are not under our control, this is going to continue to kind of happen. And so I think, we've talked about amongst ourselves, and we'll kind of work through this tonight and next week, the desire to try to figure out what that middle ground is. And I think it's looking at doing a tax increase. Unfortunately, while I think most of us don't want to do it, because, without a lot of those changes, we're going to be back here again next year and looking at it again. So, and the thing that sticks in my mind, and I'll address, I don't think he's here anymore, but Mr. Scott Miller's question, right? Why is a mill worth less than it was a couple of years ago? It's not because anybody's funneling money. It's not because anybody's pocketing money. It's because that's inflation. That's basic economics. That is mitigated in Pennsylvania and across the country by reassessments, right? We have not had a reassessment in, I think, 17 years. Was that the number from today, Eric? Somewhere in there, 18?
18, yeah.
It's been 18 years since the county has reassessed. And oddly enough, while that sounds like a long time, there's counties in the state that have been 30, 40, 50 years. But nonetheless, that is why specifically a mill is worth less today than it was last year and the year before and the year before. So, maybe 5-6 years ago, the tax increase that is proposed will maybe be half a mil, right? It's inflation. But unfortunately, aside from the basic explanation of why a mill is worth less, the fact that we don't have that reassessment continues to negatively affect the city specifically, right? We're not realizing the true value of properties in the city. The balance of our property taxes specifically is inequitable, and to the point where it's good, hardworking people that are bearing the brunt of it compared to people that either don't keep up with things or have the resources to fight it and challenge it and get their assessed value pushed down. Liz, you say this all the time when we have to approve them. Nobody's going to court to challenge, hey, I should be paying more taxes. Right. They're always getting it pushed down. That continues to negatively affect us. And Eric and I were at the commissioners meeting today and brought up this point directly to all three of them. And I'll send this to everybody, but I came across something really interesting from the Center of Rural PA from about 10 years ago. There's an actual study that shows that there's a significant relationship between doing reassessments more often and your unemployment rate, your economic vitality, et cetera. It's actually a good thing to do reassessments every 3 to 5 years, right? They don't have to do that because the state doesn't mandate it. Just like they do mandate how we're able to levy taxes and how we're able to raise revenue, a system that is about 50, 60 years old, that does not align with the needs of our city, the needs of any city in Pennsylvania, the needs of how the economy has changed in the past 20, 30 years. So we're going to talk about a number of changes. And like I said, there are some things that we can do, and I hope we do next year. We're going to talk about as we go through this budget. But unfortunately, those things are just going to continue to buy us time until we get the macro changes that we need that we can't control, right? So if anybody's watching tonight, next week, anybody comes to talk, the people that reach out with emails of, hey, I'm scared about a tax increase, the phone calls that we get, we hear you. We feel it. My coaching to any constituent that calls me, and I hope the other 6 of us will do that. I hope the mayor does this. Call your commissioners, push for a reassessment. Call your state representative, call your state senator, push for tax reform, right? We need a lot of help, and frankly, it's their job. That's the job that they get elected to do, as full-time representatives of our city, of us. And they need to hear it from more people than us. We all say it. We've all said it on the 4 years that I've been on council. I know that Bonnie, Randy, and Liz have said it for the years that they've been on council. It's high time that they hear it from other constituents and other people, right? So I'll get off my soapbox here a little bit, sorry. But I mean, at the end of the day, that's the gist of it. That's the gist of what we're looking at here. So, all right, like I said, there's a handful of, I think, changes that we've all kind of talked about. Ms. Mealy, sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say, the one thing that you should add to your list of things that you should tell these folks to do is support a move by the city to become a home rule municipality. Because that is something that we actually, that can be accomplished within the city, that gives us some level of self-management that we don't currently have via state law. And that is something that can easily be done by voters within the city, and doesn't require contacting your legislators. That needs to happen for the city of Williamsport, and it needs to happen next year, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, I mean, look, we've kind of talked about that and how to look at that. Okay. As we were kind of going through budget and mayor, when we get into January, I think it would be really good to pull you into that conversation. But maybe here's the real benefit, right? I mean, sure, you can go through a whole redesign of your governance structure, et cetera. We did that, 5 years ago ish, somewhere in there, with the optional charter question and the home rule question. Yeah.
We made a real hash of, yes.
Well, anyway, the real benefit, regardless of that, is, again, to your point, it loosens up our ability to shift our taxes around that make it more amenable to align with our constituents, our local economy, and help with the revenue issue, to where we may actually be able to say, hey, we can actually hold property taxes flat. Maybe we can even lower them, right? So I would completely agree. There's a handful of mechanisms we can do to explore that. I hope that we can look at those in January, February, March, and get that moving ASAP with your collaboration, Mayor Slaughter. Absolutely. I know Lancaster's doing it right now, actually for the exact same reason. I know Pennsylvania Economy League has looked at that. I think they're consulting with Lancaster, actually. Maybe that's something we look at formally including in second reading. I don't think that's a change we've really talked about including from a cost perspective, but I mean, that's food for thought.
The study component.
Yeah.
We should.
There are experts in the state that can really help us and guide us through that process, is my point.
Right.
I think we should kind of stew on that before second reading and think if that's something we all think is a good idea, and we can make that change in second reading.
Okay. The one thing I would say is, Mayor Slaughter, have you, in your conversations with PEL and other entities within the state, are there any I know that there are organizations that offer assistance for municipalities with the transition to home rule. It seems to me that DCED might be one of them. Have you discussed it with anyone?
I have not personally, no.
Okay.
I have talked to Mayor Srirachi in Lancaster, as Councilman Yoder said, they're going through that right now. Or whether they're about to embark on it. So they're at the very beginning. So I can check on it. I was with the Pennsylvania Economy League, though, as he referenced, it's not 1965 anymore. It's with the study they did for the tax stuff. So they may be able to help out. I don't know if they're helping Lancaster or not, but anyway, I can check into it. But I believe DCD does and other organizations, PML.
But from the last time we opened up this discussion, I recollect that there was assistance through DCED for moves like this for municipalities. Now, whether or not it's financial versus like advisory, I'm not entirely sure, but it might be worth looking into, because if we could perhaps, especially if we could simply include like a match, that would be great.
Yeah.
Janice would know. Janice, do you remember? Did we get a grant for that? For the home study?
No, we never got a grant,
We never got a grant, but they gave us.
but they do
information.
have one
A
available.
lot of resources, yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, got it. I think that would be a positive, I mean,
It's time.
we have so few options as a municipality to lower the tax burdens on our citizens. And given the things that we are required to provide that the municipalities surrounding us are not required to provide. And home rule gives us a level of flexibility, at least some level of flexibility, that third-class cities operating under the optional third-class city code in Pennsylvania just don't have. There's, it's not a political move. It's just a practical move, I believe.
And to kind of add on to that, and Mayor Slaughter referenced the study that I was exactly thinking of as well, but it's not 1965 anymore. And their predecessor study, this is not a Williamsport third-class city problem. This happens with every third-class city in the state. So, I always get the comment, well, you need to manage your departments better. Right? You need to do this, that. Well, I mean, sure, you can always do better, right? I mean, nobody's perfect, but if 50 some other cities in the state have the same problem, it's not a management problem. It's a structural problem, right? I would refer the public to them. They're easy to find, they're online, publicly available. They're really great to understand the issue. Absolutely. And I know that the Economy League just hired a new executive director, extremely well qualified. Excited to see what they do. They're championing this, which is great. I think we have a good champion in them in the municipal league. So anyway, sorry for the soapbox.
It's the second one,
Second one.
but it's all right.
Yeah.
Everybody needs to hear it.
Everybody does need to hear it. Absolutely right. Absolutely right.
What I was gonna say is,
Yes, please.
if I may, that to your point, reassessment is needed,
Mhm.
but it's not gonna fix everything. We have to strategically employ
Mhm.
and start to utilize on several different factors, several different things. We need to implement these new practices and procedures if we're going to try and turn what appears to be, I don't want to make it sound worse than it is, but continuously heavily tax burden on our residents. If we want to change that, if we want to start taking control back over that, to your point, to where we give ourselves some additional options that allow us to find tax revenue other than just continuing to tax our current residents the way that they do. These are things that we have to look into. There's really no other way to get around it unless some philanthropic billionaire wants to come bail us out. It's not going to happen. I mean, these are the things that need to happen.
Yeah.
And the city residents need to know it. And it's not just the city residents, but the city businesses and the business owners also need to know it. Because unless we take these steps, taxes aren't going down. And it's just going to get harder and harder to get people to want to come here.
Here.
I'll get off my little soapbox now. So
We've been lucky. We've had two saving graces. One was the gas industry when they came through. That helped tremendously. And then we have the ARPA funds. But I don't see where we're gonna get a third saving grace here at this point. I mean, we've tried to establish our departments with things that they need through the ARPA funds because we realize that we're not gonna be able to afford a lot of these things in the very near future. And we have been blessed, but I think the blessings are kind of running out right now.
Yep. All right. Any other comments? Initially here, I know there's a number of changes that we want to make, but
Sure,
Mr.
just
Spider.
to address all the other options that we have in front of us, something that we haven't talked about in a public setting that in at least in a few years. Something that Nick Grimes worked on that I think that we should come back to and do a little bit more diligent research with is the option that we do have, even if home rule were to not work out and a few other tax structures not go our way at the state level. We, as a third class city in the state of Pennsylvania, have the option to adopt a land value tax and tax our land differently at a different rate than we do the structures on those properties. What that would allow us to see over time is an increase in tax on vacant properties and blighted properties, because it's looking at not what is built on the property per se, but where the property is specifically located and how close that is to the amenities within a particular area of the city. So again, it's something that is going to take some research with. I've spoken with Kevin Mackey about it and a few other council members, but it is another option that we have and that we are going to continue to look into coming into next year.
Nick was passionate about that.
Mhm.
very much so,
Mhm.
very much so. Any other comments? Okay. Like I said, there's a number of changes I think that we wanted to try to make in first reading here. If anybody wants to start, they're welcome to. I'm happy to kind of go through these as well. Just for, I guess, order or efficiency's sake as well. That's perfectly fine. I know a couple that we want to make are at a couple of different spots, and Tracy, I got one location for one of these, but if there's a different place, so the first spot I was looking at was under contracted services under the city council budget, was to increase that by, give me a second, by $85,000 for two different things. Number one, Chris Black has referenced that he's no longer able to do the meetings in the evenings. So that would cover ideally around $10,000, I'm thinking, for somebody, third party, to come in and do the meetings, live stream them so the public still has access to them. And then an additional $75,000 for us to hire a third party consultant to work through the costs, informational items that we need to figure out the city hall issue that we've openly talked about as well. I would suggest putting them there. I don't know if there's a better preferable place from an administrative perspective, Tracy. But because I know the other one that I'm going to make is the negotiation piece. You recommended putting that in the Bureau of Law, for example. So I would make that motion.
A second.
If there's a different place. I didn't think it should matter, but okay. Any comments or questions on that proposed change? And again, that is line item 11005110, or no, I'm sorry. Look at the wrong one. 1100766060 contract services, increasing that from 0 to 80,000. And I can, Tracy, I can send these to you. I have them written up. Or Heather, my bad. I can email these to you. I have them in an Excel sheet, line up what category they are and department stuff. All right, we need 5 to raise, right? 4 to decrease. Mrs. Frank, on the proposed amendment to increase that line item.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to amend passes 7-0. Let me find the Bureau of Law. What page is that? Somebody throw me a bone.
23.
23. All right, so I think that would be the legal services item, Tracy?
Yes.
Okay, so I'm gonna make an amendment to modify line 1,300,70120 legal services and increase that by $75,000. That would bring that to, give me 1 second. We bring that to $203,300. Is there a second?
I'll second.
So that is an additional $75,000 to cover a third-party negotiator. And so we've kind of talked about going into next year. We have a couple of agreements that are coming up that we're going to need to renegotiate with our unions, as well as potentially our pilot contracts. Okay. That is to bring in a professional to give us some additional support in that effort to try to continue to make some of the headway that we've made the past couple of negotiations, and hopefully aid our efforts as we're kind of sitting here the next couple of years. Any comments or questions on that proposed change? Hearing seen none, Mrs. Frank on the proposed amendment.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. So those are a couple of changes that we've talked about where we want to increase a few things. A number of items that we've talked about are reductions. And again, when I kind of kick this off, I think the majority of us have the desire to reduce the tax increase to $500,000, recognizing that, what we're kind of facing next couple of years, but also recognizing the economic impact that a mill is going to have at least this year on our constituents. Ms. Mealy, you have a question, and by all means, and go ahead.
And I believe that I am the only council person in searing disagreement with this strategy.
Understood.
But
You may not be, but
it's possible that I am not. I have actually not spoken to everyone about it. But if I can, obviously, I am in favor of anything that we can cut from our budget that will not require us to cut services in a meaningful way, that will allow us to hold the tax rate closer to where it currently is than 1 mil. However, before we get into the concept of cutting things from the budget at all, I should just mention that we are in this year's budget, even before we look at monies that are in this year's budget that will not exist in next year's budget, income in this year's budget that will not exist in next year's budget. We are already running an $825,000 deficit over the course of 2024, which is an additional mill that we are not increasing the tax rate by this year. And the current budget includes $2.25 million. That would be 3 additional mills, or very close to that, in one-time revenue. We've taken everything that was in the Bowman Field Fund and put it into the budget. The remaining $1.5 million in lost revenue that we could utilize from the American Rescue Plan Act funding, put that in the budget, and $500,000 in interest on our American Rescue Plan Act funding that will, for the large part, not exist next year because we will be spending it. So you can't receive interest on something you don't have anymore. I said this last year, and whatever, I really enjoy spitting in the wind. I don't know if anybody has noticed that about me, but for the sake of argument, I have been arguing for incremental tax increases for at least the last 8 years I've been on council. Had we done that, I will run the numbers. I did not run the numbers tonight and I apologize. I will run the numbers for our next council meeting. But we would have, had we raised taxes by $0.25 over the last 4 years, instead of raising them by $1 each year, we would have had an additional $200,000 in the bottom line the first year, an additional $400,000 coming in, plus that original 200, so $600,000 in total, followed by $1 million the next year. The incremental tax increases are not something you do in the face of a $3 million budget deficit. Incremental tax increases are something that you do so that you do not have a $3 million budget deficit. So us looking at a budget where we are visualizing a $3 million budget deficit in 2025 and saying we're only going to raise taxes incrementally is, I'm not allowed to say on television what I think it is, but is irresponsible and is unfair to our taxpayers and is putting ourselves and the city in an untenable position in 2025. We are not going to find enough revenue in the coming budget year. Hopefully, we will find some revenue. I am hoping, because I am comfortable with a $1 million budgetary increase, even though we have an additional $3 million we will have to make up next year. I am hoping that we find a couple of $1 million in increased taxes for real estate that's being developed, in permit and other like licensing that we are underestimating in this budget. I am hoping that additional funding materializes, but anyway. While I will probably vote yes for several of the things that you would like to remove from the budget, I would note that even if we manage to cut $800,000 from this budget, and we will still be running an $800,000 deficit at the end of 2024, according to our budget. And even if we come in slightly under budget next year, which may well happen, we will still be running a deficit budget. I have, in my time on council, okayed a number of deficit budgets, but we ran a $300,000, we are projected to run a $300,000 deficit, well, in 2023. And that is the first time since I have been on council that we have actually had a deficit spending budget. We have always come in slightly over in our income, slightly under in our expenses, so that we have never spent more than we have taken in any year that I've been on council. But if these projections are accurate, and no offense intended in this statement, I have a lot of confidence in our financial team, so I believe these projections are accurate. But unfortunately, they are not the projections that I want. Even if we take into account the $900,000 in surplus tax income that we transferred into the emergency and reserve fund, we are still running a $300,000 deficit budget in 2023. We have actually never done that before, to my knowledge. So we are going into 2024 in a weaker financial position than we started 2023 in, and we are expecting to make it weaker yet by the end. So, okay. All right. I'll hop off my soapbox for the moment.
Look, I've my short time on council, I've been that person. Okay. I respect it. I get it. I'm not going to sit here and say that you're wrong. Okay. Especially given what when you read this budget, and from what we've openly talked about over the past 3 years since the pandemic hit, right? And I get it. I absolutely get it. I also will sit here and recognize in my head, you're making an argument where a $1 million tax increase is the fiscally prudent thing to do for the city. That's a very valid argument. I'm not going to sit here and say that you're wrong. There is an argument to be made where a lower tax increase may be the economically prudent thing to do. And I say that because what everybody in this country went through in 2020 was unprecedented in our lifetime. Okay. And from what I can tell, there's still a number of places in the country that are catching up on that. And when I say places, like people's livelihoods, their households, I think Williamsport's one of them. unfortunately. And I think that you're seeing that in more rural areas compared to urban. And so I worry about that. And I'm not going to sit here and I don't know what the right answer is, to be honest with you. I think you can make a good argument either way. To me, this is a step in that direction while giving our constituents, in my mind, a little bit more time to kind of get caught up and get their feet under them as we kind of rebound. That's my personal perspective and opinion. I get it, though, Liz.
Adam, you and I yelled at each other while poor Randy watched for 3 hours about this the other day.
Yes, we did.
So-
Yes, we did. And thank you for, God bless you, Randy. Anyway,
So no, I respect everyone else's opinion. I am not,
as do I.
when,
Even mine.
yeah,
Yes.
when I get angry about it, I simply get angry about it from 14 some years of trying to get the city to plan financially and just kind of watching us kick the can down the road. And fortunately, the can has never gone as far down the road as I've ever been worried that it will. But there's a year when that will happen. And inflation is certainly a driver, an understandable driver, both for us to try to keep the tax increase at a minimum, but also a driver for city expenses to really potentially go crazy in the next year and change. And you know, that juxtaposition makes me nervous. I have zero interest in increasing the tax burden on the citizens of Williamsport at no more than you guys do. And perhaps as someone who owns a business, rentals, and a home in the city, even less than some of you. But I also recognize that we can't necessarily make do with what we got. So, okay. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. So there's a handful of reductions that I think a number of us would like to make. I'm happy to start. Vince, you look like you're kind of chomping at the bit to start as well. I mean,
No, I'm gonna wait because
Okay.
I know if I start, I'm gonna have most of the people in this room walk out because here's my list of line item reductions. I went through this budget line by line, examined everything over the past several years to see what we asked for versus what we spent versus what I think we actually need to spend. And I cut it as much as I possibly could because what I really want to see is oversight and accountability. I get it. We have bills to pay, but if you spend all the money that you have for a certain thing and you need money, I would like to know why. You know, when we look back, and I get it, some departments, they don't, or some line items, not everything is spent. That carries over into the next year. Thank you, Liz, for clarifying that over that conversation. But we need what? I'm sorry? No, what I'm saying is that I look at some of these line items and, you know, over the past several years, for example, and these are hypothetical numbers, a department is requesting $10,000 for a line item. They only spend $4,000 of it. The following year, they request $12,000 for a line item. Again, you only spend $4,000 of it. So this year, when I see a line item, now they're requesting $15,000. I can't help but ask myself, why does our ask continuously go up if what we spend has constantly been the same? And that is where I'm coming at when I write down all of these proposed cuts, as far as more oversight, more fiscal accountability, more fiscal responsibility, because to Councilwoman Liz Mealy's point, what she just said earlier, we're looking at a $300,000 deficit at best going into next year already.
800.
That's so when you have more bills than you have money, isn't that by definition going broke? And the only way for us to turn this around is to continuously pass the buck on to the taxpayers. And that's not right, not one bit.
So that wasn't what I wanted you to clarify. I believe I heard you say in a few of us heard you say that if you don't spend your money from one year, it carries forward to the next.
Oh, I apologize. No, that's.
Okay, all right. I just wanted to make sure we were clear on that point.
I apologize, no. But yeah, what I'm just getting at is that I'm gonna wait to see where we end up. I've been saying it since last year that I would not support any kind of a budget that proposes any kind of a tax increase. I think that we need to all tighten our belts. I think that we have to have a more fiscally responsibility approach to everything. I think we need to negotiate firmer and harder toward more equitable agreements across the board with all the various organizations that we have to deal with. Because like I said earlier, we cannot continue to pass our shortcomings or an inability to govern the city properly. We cannot continue to pass that on to the taxpayers by way of tax increases. We can't. Not when I see that taxes are going up, yet certain organizations' contributions stay flatlined. The margins just get bigger and bigger. And it's definitely not equitable. And yet we're all the ones that have to pick up the burden. And like I said earlier, businesses they're not going to want to come here anymore. Why should I move to Williamsport when I can move to Loyalsock and pay, I don't know what it is, I'm going to take a stab in the dark, a third of the taxes? Why? So what I'm getting at is we need more, I think, accountability and oversight. I'm sorry, Liz, what were you going to say?
I think our tax rate is actually more than 3 times as high as Loyalsock's.
Oh, yeah,
That's all I'm
which
gonna
makes my
say.
point, which makes even more of a point.
But here's the thing, okay, and look, Eric and I kind of hit this point with the commissioners today, right? And I did the math, okay? If we were a township, all right, and operated just like Loyalsock does, our property tax revenue would only need to be around $4 million, okay? Because we would not have a professional police department, okay? We would not have a professional fire department. That's what differentiates us, okay?
Mhm.
But while I'll use the police department example. I'm not picking on you, but this is just an area that we've talked about openly for the past couple of years, right? And it's an area where, you know, we've had a lot of dialogue about staffing, et cetera, right? I still believe there's things that we could deploy to make that department more effective and offload the need for additional police, right? But we can't just get rid of that department, okay? The problems that our police department tackles in the city are unique to the city, right? For a number of reasons, but notably because a lot of the services in this area a lot of the services in this area are housed here, right? It's where a lot of the low income, et cetera, are housed, and where that type of housing has been built over the years that are associated with the types of challenges our police department face. I mean, so we can't just.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
I hope you don't think that I was proposing we do away with the
And
police,
if
not
we
at all.
would-
Not
I
at all.
mean, we've got to find a balanced approach to it, because if we would go too far the other way, businesses are definitely not going to come here, was my entire point there, right?
I understand. Yep.
So,
We need to find something that's mutually equitable,
you know,
and we have to find that balance. And right now, things are, in my opinion, out of balance. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, can I take this to a turn and get into the budget?
please
Mhm.
go for it.
Agree here.
Go for it.
Yep.
Chris, I do have a question for you first of all, okay? It has to go with the TV cable franchise. It seems to have gone down what we're gaining from them. Is there a reason to that? And when is our the TV cable franchise?
Yeah.
First of all, I would like to know when the contract is up with that and to negotiate, because the last time we had to negotiate for the highest number we could possibly get. And I see where we're already getting lower in this.
What the TV franchise pays you on is actual TV broadcast cable, not streaming services. So just because Comcast is in your house and you don't only use it for internet, the city does not receive anything from it.
Okay,
So if, say, you example, have a Comcast full TV package in your house, you're paying $300 some a month. And then you decide that you want to go to streaming services, you're no longer paying that franchise fee to the city.
okay, so that's why it's gone down in cost.
Even though we are getting a higher percentage.
Yeah.
It's just the rates going down because more people are going to get away from that type of service.
Because I fought for that the last time when the contract was up. I don't know when the contract is up this time.
Probably it was renewed last year, I'm guessing probably in the next 3 years.
Okay. Because you want to keep on top of that so we don't lose that, because it did get lost in the translation for a couple of years. Okay,
I don't think it was ever renewed. I don't think.
We went for the
lost
higher- we went
anything
for-
during this time.
we went for a
We
higher
just
rate.
Didn't have it renegotiated.
Right, exactly. Exactly. So I just wanted to know why that number went down.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you for explaining that to me. Do we want to go into other things at this point?
Sure, if
Okay.
you have something you'd like to make a motion on, by all means.
Okay, we covered city council, what we're doing with that.
Mhm. You speak into the mic a little bit more.
Oh, okay, I'm sorry.
No, that's okay.
Let me
Just slide it closer to you.
Let me
Okay.
move all this now.
You just shut it off.
I have a big mouth, obviously I don't have a big enough mouth at this point. Okay, let us go to the page here. Page 14, under the mayor's office. Mayor, I have gone through your travel expenses since 2020. And in 2020, you had 0 in your travel expenses. In 2021, you had budgeted $275 and you spent $255, so you were under your budget. Then we went into 2022, you budgeted $500 and you spent $760, so you went over your budget. For 2023, you budgeted 4,000, and so far you are over your budget already. For 2024, you're budgeting 7,000. We can't afford this. I don't know where you're getting this from. Where your travel expenses are,
Sure.
but I would like an explanation.
Sure, absolutely. So actually, the mayor's budget went down. I did increase, overall it went down. The travel expenses, professional development went up, primarily due to the number of conferences, professional development that we go to. I've been in Hershey at the Homes Within Reach conference. I'm obviously the vice president of Pennsylvania Municipal League. And I would argue and counter that to say the travel, the connection I make through that brings money back into the city. We referenced tonight the grants that we've received. I referenced the Trust for Public Land, who I met at one of the conferences. So the travel and the professional development and the conferences will continue to increase. Obviously, the cost is increasing for that. The Mayor's Innovation Project, which I'm on the steering committee, which is another national organization that I'm part of, which again brings a lot of resources into the city. So my budget went down. Travel expenses, professional development, we did ask to increase a little bit for those reasons right there. The travel and professional development, I would argue, pays great dividends into the city and pays for itself. And it's such a minor piece, relatively speaking, compared to the budget, with my mayor's office budget going down. That's why we put it there. I will, regardless, continue to go to the conferences, some that I really do need to be at on behalf of the city of Williamsport. So either way, I will be attending. If I have to pay out of the pocket, I understand that. But I would argue that it does bring a significant amount of money with the connections that we make at these conferences and the professional development, on top of the grants and different things that I'm made aware of, or that we're made aware of, that we otherwise may not be. For example, what I referenced, the Trust for Public Land, which gave us a free overview of our park system at no cost to us. So it is very beneficial to get out and about. Folks don't just drop money off in Williamsport, as I think we've been saying all night long. So getting out and promoting Williamsport, promoting the city, promoting what we're doing, actually asking folks to invest here and take a look at Williamsport and let them know everything that we have going on. I would argue is very, very beneficial to the city.
It's a huge expense. There is telephones. There's videos to do. There's so many other ways. When you look at the expense of this, I think all of us have been involved in organizations where we did traveling for the organizations. And a lot of it came out of our own pockets because we chose to do that, go in that for that position. You chose to do the position you're in. And I look at it this way. First of all, I would like to make sure all receipts are turned in because so far you have not been that accurate with your receipts.
I disagree with that 100%. All my receipts are turned in. I would fully disagree with you on that. I have no idea what you're talking about
Because
there.
I called the controller's office to find out, and
Yeah.
she doesn't have access, which we want to change next year for the sake of, she should have all that information in her office.
Again, I don't know what you're referencing because she does have all that information. I don't know. I mean, Peg's was sitting right here, so I'm not sure what you're talking about. You're accusing me of something that's kind of irritating me because you're trying to say I'm doing something I'm not doing.
Let me finish my.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying that's, I'm not.
Hey,
going
hey,
to-
hey, hey, hey,
Let me finish my statement.
Bonnie, go ahead and finish, but let's get moving here.
Yeah.
When I asked for receipts, she doesn't have all of it because she's never had to have access to all of this. And at this point, she wants to make sure, in fact, she wants to do a presentation in January for the departments of how they do things. Because life has changed dramatically, as we all know. And to make her life easier and better and more accurate, it's got to go through her and we've got to know what's going on there. And we've got, and not saying that either one, anybody has done anything. I'm just saying that the paperwork is not done the way it should. Yes.
And I'm just going to, I want to clarify a few things there. Because Tracy is as thorough as you're going to get. Peg absolutely has to sign off on everything. We can't, if she's asked us for anything, I'm not aware of anything we've never given to her that she has asked for, number one. Number two, if there is something that she's in need of, she talks to Tracy, Heather, myself all of the time. So I just want to clarify that point that you're bringing up, and that felt accusatory. That's why I did not take lightly to that. But if there's anything she does need, if there's any receipts that we have or that she's in need of, we have 100% of receipts. I just want to clarify that point. There is not a point ever that I've gone anywhere, anybody in our administration that has gone somewhere, done something where we've asked for repayment or reimbursement that we do not have a receipt for. That is ludicrous to even suggest that, and we will not agree at all to that.
Her bookkeeping was different, okay, than what it is at this point. That's
Okay.
all I'm saying.
I'm just,
There's
yeah, I'm
nothing
just
be-
asking. She can clarify that. I'm just saying our
Okay.
bookkeeping is accurate.
Well, let's go back to the $7,000 that you're
Okay.
budgeting. for
Yes,
the
we can go back
year.
to that. Yeah.
I think it's too much. I really do. And I think I would like to reduce that.
Okay, you have the option to do that, of course. I'm just making an argument or stating why we suggested that.
What you're saying is when you go to these meetings that you're bringing things that are going to be beneficial to the taxpayers.
Absolutely.
And when you do go to these meetings, could you please at least include us into that information? I think we'd appreciate that knowledge. You've been going a lot and doing things, but at times we don't know. And, you sat on council and you would get frustrated if you weren't informed of things. You know that as well as I do, Darren. And we want you to bring as much as you can to the city, but we also want to be informed.
Okay. I'll push back a little bit. I think I do keep you informed of places I go. We just talked earlier tonight. I talked to President Yoder actually when I was at Hershey yesterday, keeping them abreast. I feel like I do keep everyone abreast of things that happen. And once we get something, I put it out there. We've talked about PML very openly, and we just talked about it earlier too with the Pennsylvania Economy League and all of that. So if there's additional information you want, I'm happy to provide. But yeah, so the different places I go, I would imagine, I think I almost always do give an update if there's something that is relevant and that's helpful to the city. But if there's additional things you would like, sure, I can give you that.
You learn by what other people do. You don't have to, start things from scratch if another city has done something. And I understand that completely.
Right.
And that's what I would like to see done.
That's what I'm telling you, that's what we're doing when we go to these.
I think what I'm saying, I want you to keep us excited of what you're doing.
Okay.
Okay?
That's
What I want to see.
That's what I'm telling you that we're trying to do. Okay, but yeah, you're okay. Yes.
Okay, so I think I would like to reduce this. I'm not sure to how much, but I think 7,000 is too much.
So I think in the spirit of what you're trying to get at, Bonnie, I'm gonna take a stab at summing this up to kind of clear this up here a little bit. All right. I think there's a little bit of a perception that the travel continues to increase, and I don't know that we're seeing the benefit of it now. Mayor Slaughter referenced a number of funding streams, et cetera, that he had just talked about, that I'm not going to sit here and say that I was thinking about, right? When I look at the return on that, I think I've openly said, I think a number of us openly said, I think we're looking for how we can operationally work differently, right? What are other cities doing to manage costs rather than revenue streams? But I'm not going to discredit what you said from the revenue side of this. So here's what I would propose. I'll make a motion to amend the travel economic development line item to $4,000, reduce it by $3,000. Okay. Mayor Slaughter's got a point on the relationships he's building, right? To bring money into here, right? But I think there is more that we can see in how we can do things better from our budget and how we operate as a city. Okay. I think that kind of meets the desire to reduce that a little bit, but to enable the mayor to show us more return on that. Is there a second?
We'll second that.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions on that proposed amendment? Mr. Allison.
Yeah. I have a question for the mayor. Mayor, what are the reasons for the increase?
So there's the Mayor's Innovation Project, there's National League of Cities, which takes place in Washington, DC. Generally, I only go for a day or so. Many of the mayors and other officials stay for 3 to 4 days. So missing some of the important meetings where you can build relationships on the grants and different things. That's one. There's going to be increased other travel and conferences because I'm the vice chair of the Pennsylvania Municipal League. We were in State College on Monday. I mean, that's close. Obviously, we didn't stay over or anything. But, you know, DCD and the different things. We have a new regional director. I was fortunate and able to meet him. We have some DCD grants that are submitted right now. I was able to explain to him what's going on, what we're looking at, what we'd like to do. So there's just a lot more out there that we could get to and do. And generally the ones that I do attend, the Pennsylvania Municipal League a few times a year and different things, the costs are just rising. And so that's really was the nature of the increase, like everything else.
And Mary, you mentioned your vice chair. And so when will you become president?
October.
And that changes the dynamic even more, correct?
Correct. It's yes, it's a statewide organization. When you're president of that, of course, you represent Pennsylvania and the Pennsylvania Municipal League and the National League of Cities. There's increased travel for that. But it's good. It's getting us exposure. Was my argument. It's not only good for the administration or whatever, but it's also good for our city, which is the main and most important point to get out there. Again, these grants and all different things that we're getting, even the developers that we're meeting along the way, they don't just come here necessarily. We've developed relationships across the board, not just myself, but the administration, and I would imagine members of city council too. So when we go out there and we do this, I know, I've been at PML with some of our council members. There's a lot of people, and at these conferences, there are a lot. So if you bring, 2 or 3 nuggets back, or you make 2 or 3 connections, I mean, it's absolutely huge for the city. Even in this and around the state, let them mention, in the region for this. And so, whether it's a state agency, DCD, DCNR, or whatever the case might be, or national stuff, when you're talking about whether it's, whatever national agencies are out there. So, I think there's a case to be made across the board, and we've seen the benefits of a lot of this. We've seen a lot of money come in the door. We just got the DCNR pump track, talking to, secretaries, DCNR and different folks, and letting DCNR people know. Wes Farringer, who's our local rep, seeing all the things that we're doing. It's going to continue to happen and continue to increase. So, I mean, it's beneficial. That's my argument.
Okay, and I happen to agree with that. I think the mayor is the face of our city. We don't have the ability on council to get out there and do the things and get to the places and make the connections. And I think there's a great value in making connections and relationships. You can have a good idea that might be successful, but it doesn't come to fruition unless you're able to sell that idea. And one of the things the mayor does is sell the municipality, the city, to other entities, and thinking beyond the borders of our city. There's only one way to accomplish that, and that's to get out there and I think everybody is aware of different instances where things have happened not because it was planned, but it was a fortuitous meeting with someone that you happen to make a connection with that paid off. And I think in the past, our city government's been rather in that area. We've been kind of parochial. We've been introspective and tried to do things solely within the confines of our city and those kinds of connections, other than reaching out to the state or the county commissioners or so forth. But personally, I was encouraged to see us have a mayor that is taking the time to get out there and do those kinds of things. It's like planting a field. You got to throw out a lot of seed to make sure that you get some fruit, some return on that. So personally, I don't have a problem with keeping it what's in the budget right now.
And I'll just add one other piece. I was in Hershey yesterday, as I mentioned, at the Homes Within Reach conference. I'll add two. One, if you're not in a room, somebody will be. And you know, if they get to explain their project and what's going on, and we don't, you know, we're already at a disadvantage. But I'm down there, and there's it's a Homes Within Reach conference, and we're talking about RDAs and land banks and different thing. And there was an attorney there who she specializes in land banks, and she said, Derek, I realize you all have a brand new land bank. I would be happy to come up and train them, or do a virtual option if you would like, and just go over all the ins and outs and intricacies of a land bank. And again, if I wasn't there and didn't meet her and see her and talk to her about our land bank and what we're trying to accomplish, and that we allocated $1 million to the RDA and $1 million to the land bank, but that we still don't know exactly our RDA and land bank members, because it is brand new, exactly how all that operates. Although they have obviously they know how it operates, but there's a lot you can do with land bank. And so she said she's willing to come up here and speak with them. And so it's relationships and conversations like that happen whether you're in the room or not. But particularly if you are in the room and they see, council administration really has some good things happening in Williamsport. Tell us more about that. Why should we support this grant? Should we write a letter of support? There were senators there yesterday, state senators. And again, one had graduated from Cumming College. He was talking to me about, it was Senator Argle, about the different things that he sees happening up here, and it's exciting. And so when they're voting on RACBs and grants and different things, or giving their support or whatever, it helps if they said, oh, we met council person so we met mayor so we know that they're doing this and they got this going on. And so, I mean, yes, I do. I think it's vitally important.
Mr. Mack, do you have a comment?
No, I mean, I'll second what Councilman Allison said. And Mayor Slaughter, I appreciate you saying that even if we take this money out of your budget, you're still going to go. I mean, I personally don't think you should have to pay for that kind of stuff. So, I mean, the connections that you're making, I do feel are fairly invaluable. So, I mean, if we're going to sit here and I guess also, sorry, I don't necessarily think it's our job to keep track of your receipts. That's not what we were elected to do. So I'm not even sure Norm, do we even, does Ms. Woodring even have to give us that stuff if we ask for it?
If you ask for it, yes.
Okay, I mean, again,
Yeah.
we're not here to keep track of what the mayor does on a day-to-day basis. I mean, if we're really that concerned about $3,000, I mean, I'm just looking at the mayor's budget here. I mean, do we know what the financial condition of the SPCA is in? I mean, if we're worried about $3,000, then let's cut $3,000 out of the SPCA's. I mean, what does the city get out of that $28,000 every year?
That's the spay and neuter program.
Okay,
Yeah, we need to fund that.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
That I would argue
More
that's
money.
that is.
so we have to fund $28,000.
Yeah, that's important.
I got a bunch of feral cats
Yeah,
in my neighborhood. Let's fund the spay and neuter program.
I'm not saying defund it. I'm just saying,
Yeah.
okay. Is it worth more than cutting the mayor's travel budget to get out there and make connections with people? I don't, I'm just trying to make a point.
Yeah.
So
John, Randy,
I will be voting no for this.
the reason why I bring this up is all the conversation that was started before we even gone into this of what state our city is in and where we're situating, that we are not bringing in the funding and the money to pay all of our bills. And I think, I don't know about how you all operate, but if I'm having a hard time paying my bills, I cut my expenses in other areas. And I'm not going after you, Derek. I'm scared. I'm really scared of what's going to happen to our city. I mean, as Liz put it to us so plainly of where we're behind. I mean, it really does frighten you because you don't know where we can go and get things. I mean, yes, it's great to go after the grants and the funding, make our city look, fantastic. But if you're not bringing the money in, it's where are we going to be in another year, 2 years, 3 years? So, I'm saying cut something from you only because, and you're not the only one I'm going to pick on. Trust me. I mean, because I'm looking at the total budget because it just, I don't want to see what Jonathan Williamson used to always say. It's not if we go bankrupt, it's when we go bankrupt. And I mean, he was saying that the whole time he was on council. And you know that, Liz, how many times did he say that? And you're saying this year, what kind of shape we're in, and we all realized what we were in. And that's why I'm looking at it and I don't begrudge what you're doing. I really don't. I'm just frightened, and maybe it's coming out. My Irish gets up there, okay? And it just gets where I'm frightened. I don't want to see our beautiful city go under. That's where I'm coming from.
And I guess my last point, I'll just say it is advocacy as well. If you look at PML, there's a very strong advocacy component too. So as we travel around, and again, I know we talked about it earlier, but the tax stuff, we're advocating in the legislature and different things. So part of that does include advocacy, whether it's the local use of radar, whether it's talking to our state legislators about the need for tax reform, or whatever the case might be. So there's a lot of components I could go on, but there is more to it that I think beyond the grants and things that hopefully will pay dividends to us. Of course, they haven't touched tax reform or any of that. And to Councilman Yoder's point, we do strongly talk to our state legislators about that and the need for them to do something in Harrisburg around that. There's been nothing that's been done. And I did bring that up very recently as well.
Ms. Mealy.
I also won't be supporting this motion, not because I think there are items within our budget and the SPCA, to your point, John, is another one of them where you kind of got to spend money to make money, which is to say that sometimes some of some of the things that we spend money on are investments, to the mayor's point, in going to places and meeting people and wedging yourself in their mind so that they think of you when they think of a municipality that needs X, Y, or Z. And so I do tend to think that money spent on managed travel, and money that is not excessively spent on travel, and $7,000 is not a lot of money in the grand scheme of things is a wise idea for the city, and has the potential to earn us more than it costs us. But to your point, Bonnie, it is obviously the purview of council and the purview of the controller, for that matter, to look into any receipts within the city that we believe, not this administration, but in other administrations that I've served with on council. I think there's been ample reason to doubt the veracity or the validity of expenditures made within the mayor's office. And Derek, that is not an attack on you, but it is simply an observation about good government, that part of that is questioning, perhaps not in this forum, but in general, it is wise for us to keep an eye on where our money is going and know how it's being spent. But that's just part of the responsibility of a city council and of a controller to know how we're spending money. And doesn't need to be a big public blow up. So thanks, guys.
Any other comments or questions? Mrs. Frank on the motion to amend.
Mr. Allison,
No.
Mr. Mackey,
No.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
No.
Mrs. Cat,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to amend passes 4-3. Juana, do you have any other ones?
Yes, I would like to go to community development.
Okay.
And this would be. Yeah,
Page 46, right?
yes. I should have written that down with my notes. Yep, you are here. Skip maybe, yes, you're here.
What page, Bonnie?
Page
46.
46. With community development, we have been financed by 100% by federal grants, community development block grants, and the home funds. And CBDG was reimbursed from fair funds. Skip, at this point, you have a salary that you're paying that is now coming out of general fund, which we've never had that before, because all of your department was done through all of these other agencies. And not only that, but you've also hired CEDACOG. CEDACOG has come in to take over a lot of what's going on in your office. And it's costing us more money in more ways than one. Like I said, the salaries that we never had before, and also taking care of CEDACOG. I don't know what we're paying CEDACOG for these programs. One of the things that I would like to ask you is CEDACOG, they didn't do the home program. That was they never did anything with the home program at all. I don't know if they're doing that or not, or is that up to your department to go after it? I'd like to ask that question of you. To go into the salaries of what's going on in your department. I don't know why you need an office manager. I don't know, the finance specialist. I don't know what's needed with that at this point. I mean, it's a small office at this point, and you have CEDACOG doing a percentage of your work now. So if you can explain this to us.
I'll be glad to try. CEDACOG does come in and they have been hired and retained to help manage the CDBG program to make sure that we are in compliance with all HUD guidelines and all HUD requirements. Presently, we still do all the work within the office for the home program. We have expanded the role of the office to the RDA projects, the land bank projects, and we do and have been for a while doing the fair projects. We do garner revenue for some of the work that is done in the fair rehab programs and reimburse the city. The fact is, truthfully, the CDBG program, the amount of revenue coming in from the feds is decreased. Costs have increased. And at some point in time, the program itself cannot bear all the costs relevant to operating our department. We are doing, I believe, more than what was being done before I got here. At that point in time, all they were doing was the basic CDBG home program. You've asked and we've taken on other responsibilities, and the funding for those other responsibilities cannot be paid using housing and urban development funds.
Okay, so what are you, what if, I know we asked you to do a couple of things. I can't remember exactly what they were that you're covering at this point. That would justify the salaries that are coming out of general fund.
So let me ask this question. So outside of RDA land bank, what additional scope is your office doing? And here's where I'm coming from. When we hired you, we asked you to revitalize that office and really expand what was happening in that office with what you've had. Outside of the land bank redevelopment authority, I can't sit here and say what that is. And my perception is we have CEDACOG coming in here and helping to manage some of this. And so what in my mind, that kind of offsets a lot of this. And so I'd like to know what additional scope is the office doing? Because in my mind, I think we have an open community development specialist position currently, I believe. That's open that we're trying to hire for. Is that correct?
That is correct. And we've basically filled that position, and the office manager position. It's a transition from the office manager into that specialist position, because she had been filling in during the absence of that CD specialist. And we feel that she is qualified to take on the position in a full-time capacity. The office manager position, we're looking at options, whether it become a full-time, whether it become a part-time position, or whether we reduce it even further. Those are things that we're looking at to try to reduce some of the costs within the office itself.
So you said that you have filled the community development specialist position?
We did as of today.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. So I mean, so I sit here in my mind, I don't understand why community development needs a singular office manager for that office is what I'm saying. So
And that's what we're trying to evaluate as we move forward.
I don't
Yes,
think
sir.
you need to evaluate it. I think we can get rid of it. Is my point. I mean, unless again, there's something that's there that I'm not seeing, and I don't know if other people have seen this as well, but I don't see much expanded scope to justify an office manager from my perspective. So what additional is happening outside of RDA land bank that was not happening before you got here?
Well, with the new passage of the LERTA ordinance, we'll hopefully be more involved in the application process and the processing of those applications for the LERTA program.
I believe that office did that though with previous LERTAs, so that's not really anything new from what I understand.
But there was, and you're right,
Okay.
they did process the alertas, but there was rather infrequent. I believe with the new program and the ordinance that you've put in place, making it citywide and also expanding it to residential and to commercial, we should see more activity, which is going to require some more time. What that is at this point in time, I'm not here to be able to predict that. You know, we're ready to bring, we are in the process of preparing the change of the fair ordinance to take it from just 3 areas of the city to make it a citywide program for rehabilitation, which will expand the scope and the need for management of that program. The 3 districts that had been originally under the fair program, there just wasn't enough activity. So we went to the county commissioners, who have more or less given their consent for us to expand the program. We'll be bringing that to you after the first of the year, and an expanded citywide fair program, which is going to also increase the activity within the office. We're working with codes as we discussed to deal with the blighted property issue through the RDA and the land bank. And we're in the process of looking at acquiring one, if not two properties here in the very early parts of January of 2024. The board will make a decision come the December meeting, at least on one of them and maybe two properties to enter into eminent domain proceedings to acquire them from absentee ownership. We're trying to, as an office, complete the directives of city council and the mayor to the best of our ability. We wound up with significant amount of retirement. From the time I walked in, 3 people that were here for 20, 30, 40 years left. So we're training new people that have come in to work for the city and trying to get a grasp on what all the responsibilities and activities are. We asked and you granted the contract with CEDACOG to make sure that we were in compliance with housing and urban development. Do we need an office manager? I can't stand here this evening before you and say, yes, we do, or we may not. I hear what you're saying, that you don't want us to fill that position, and I'll take your directive and do what you tell me to do. I just don't know if the phones, if we've got people out in the field doing things, if somebody's going to be there to answer a phone or to answer a question from a constituent who might walk in the door. But we'll do our best to do whatever you tell us to do within the guidelines of the budget.
Technology is a very good thing. So. Okay. Bonnie, anything else to add?
No, there's,
I think,
I don't know what to do with it.
so I'll make another, proposal here. I would move that we, in the community development department, I believe that would be 232051010 salaries. Reduce that. Nope, sorry, I'm on the wrong page. Pull that back.
2360.
2360.
Mhm.
Yep. I would make an amendment to the salaries line item on planning and community economic development 2360. Reduce that from 161,357 to 129,123. That would eliminate at least what's paid from the general fund for the office manager position. It's vacant from what I can tell. A couple of people were like, what are you doing? Am I looking at the wrong? Was what?
Reduce it from what to what?
161,357 to 129,123. Miss Mealy, what's up?
I think the total allocated salary for the office manager is $40,000.
Yep, that's a different fund though.
Understood, that some of that is being paid out of community development, but it would seem as though we would then have additional funding within the community development funding side of things. And we could apply perhaps a higher portion of one of the other salaries so that it might be wisest to reduce that salary line by 40,000.
Okay.
I can't necessarily speak to that, but it just seems like that's, we also obviously have benefits, a percentage
Yep.
of benefits accounted in there.
And I don't know what they are, to be honest with you. So, I mean, Tracy, if you're able to shoot us a note about if there's any additional changes to like health insurance, et cetera, that we need to make in second reading, that's fine. For any like staffing changes that we do in the budget.
There would be. Also changes to revenue line, because fair and RDA reimburse a portion of, sorry.
Oh, you're good.
Fair and RDA reimburse a portion of those costs. So if those costs are an expense, then you're not getting the reimbursement for it. So it also changes the revenue line item.
Okay.
Mhm. Right. And we don't necessarily have a calculation, I'm assuming, for exactly how much. of that,
Not
because
at all.
we
I
don't-
wasn't asked to
Right.
have that.
Oh, no,
at
no,
this
no. I
meeting.
mean,
that's
just
okay.
in general, I don't know. Obviously, well, the reimbursement was a guess one way or the other, correct?
It's an
Because-
estimate, correct?
Right, an estimate, because we, yeah, all right. estimate is, yeah.
Yes.
But because we don't know what we'll be billing out to one category or another, I'm assuming.
Correct.
But okay, anyway, I would assume we could have accurate numbers for that next time.
Yes, I can get those for
Okay.
you.
Yeah.
Yes.
Please.
That's how I couldn't make them out. I couldn't figure it out.
So made that motion. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. Any additional comments or questions on that motion?
Can I just finalize what that
Yes.
number was? We're reducing it to 129.
129, 123.
Okay, and we're going to ignore the portion that's lying within community
I'd like
development.
to see what Tracy comes back with.
Okay, sounds good.
So the comment she made about, I think you wanted to reduce it further because of the,
Because I would assume, but not be entirely positive, that we could then bank some portion of some salary to community development that had been being charged to the general fund budget. But that is to say the total salary for that position is $40,000.
Something like that.
But I'm not sure to what extent we can book more of someone else's salary from the community, from block grant funding.
That is on the last page of the salary,
Mhm.
which is being from that entirely clear what you're asking me, but on page 70 is the balance of those salaries
Mhm.
getting charged to community development.
Right. I guess what I'm saying is it's partly an internal conversation, whether if we're not charging an office manager salary to community develop, to block grant funding, we can take a larger portion of someone else's salary from block grant funding because they are doing work under the block grants that didn't make it into the minimum and into the percentages of the funding that we could allocate. Do you understand what I'm saying? Right. Yeah, for the administrative cap. Yeah. So my assumption is that we can probably reduce it by the full 40,000, but that just depends on how we dealt with the allocation and the cap there. Right.
so there's a motion, a second. Any additional comments or questions on this item? Mrs. Frank on the proposed change.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion to amend carry 7-0. Bonnie, were there any other ones you had off the top of your head quick?
No,
Okay.
not right now. No.
There was a number that we kind of talked about as well. I'm happy to go through them, but if others would like to do it, they're welcome to as well. I know we've been kind of spending about 45 minutes or so on a couple, so I don't know how in-depth people want to get or how much expediency people want either in going through some of these that we've talked about, so. All right.
Why don't we touch some?
Yeah, I'll keep on here. Okay. So let's go to streets and parks. Let me find it here. I have it marked. Give me a second.
27,
27.
one of them.
Thanks. I was working in the Excel sheet, and so I'm not like really good with the page numbers here. No,
Not that one. Oh, wait, no, that's engineering.
Sal,
I'm sorry.
yeah.
It's engineering.
I want to go to flood control. Somebody tell me the flood control page. Well, here let's start on page 36. We can go to salaries. And I'm not going to make a proposed change here. So something that we had talked about amongst a couple of us was the assistant director position that you had proposed, Scott. And you know, we're going to look at the grants one as well. I would like to take another week to think through that one. And from what I gather, I think traditionally there was one a number of years ago. So I personally would be okay taking another week to kind of think through that one.
Right.
Scott, if you're okay, if I call you with questions and that kind of stuff. But that is something I think is in the back of my head. But I would ask others to think about over the next week as well.
Yeah.
And then I would like to go to flood control, which is on page
6,
39.
39.
Yeah.
Which budget?
Oh,
are you
yeah.
in?
What control?
Yep, flood control.
39.
So it would be line item flood control materials 2280. I'm gonna make a motion that we reduce that from $25,000 to zero. Is there a second? I'll explain in a second.
Which one? Oh, you said 2280, what finish?
62192.
62192, okay.
I'll second.
So we can pay for that directly out of rescue plan funding. So Scott, the breakdown you gave me, I sent it to UHY. They said it's all eligible. So what's up though? Yeah. Through an ordinance either next week or in January. Mhm. Yep. Scott, go ahead. I'm sorry.
So I guess I just got a couple questions on that.
Yep.
So that's my department for flood control materials, obviously. Now, the email is saying that, correct me if I'm wrong, it was my herbicides.
Yep.
So that's something I need every year.
Yep.
So your plan is to fund a lot of my materials for 1 year out of ARPA?
What I'd like to do is, let's see if we can get a 3-year contract and fund it for 3 years.
For just my sprays.
For your materials, yes. If we can't, then, I mean, including the budget next year, but
Yeah.
so there's a handful that we can pay for directly out of ARPA to potentially minimize the increase, okay? This was one of them that are eligible directly from ARPA. So
Okay,
it's
so-
not saying like, we recognize that you need it.
Mhm.
We're just would rather pay for it in a different funding source next year to minimize it being in the general fund is simply it.
All right, so I gotta try to
Ms. Mealy.
get all my herbicides for the year, all my paint for all the stems. And any additional things kind of calculated out on what is that how that's gonna work? Or I guess maybe I'm confused a little bit on it. So these materials are what it is, and maybe I didn't explain with in my email, but what it is it's for all the pump stations these guys do maintenance on. They buy we gotta do all the painting on the stems and everything of that nature. Just the maintenance and upkeep, they paint the inside of the building every year per, Army Corps. But if the idea is to what I think was going on is we're just gonna purchase all this out of ARPA.
Mhm.
And then see where it lands. But, obviously I can look into the herbicides for the contract. I'll have to check with them guys because I use quite a bit of it, obviously. I mean, but
Scott, were you ordering these things piecemeal?
Pardon?
Not all, you were ordering all these things piecemeal, not.
yeah,
all
so
one
we do a
time?
bulk order for all of our pesticides for the year right out of the gate.
Oh, you do that?
Yes,
Okay.
yep.
And the paint and everything you do?
The
all
paint, I mean, obviously you have miscellaneous stuff throughout the year, but a lot of the paint we do, we grab, we can't really do anything until springtime with that stuff, but yeah.
Okay. Ms. Mealy, and then Mr. Pelisi.
I don't care. That herbicides and paint will degrade over time though, right? It's not as though we can buy.
Yeah, obviously, yeah, I mean, yeah, paint will, if you don't use it probably within a year or two, herbicide would do the same thing.
Yeah,
Right.
but so my point is, I mean,
Right.
we can budget for 3 years in ARPA and pay for it over by the end of 2026.
Yes,
Mhm.
but we would need to have a contractual obligation, correct?
Yeah.
With theoretically a settled price point. And would Scott have to get 3 quotes because it's federal funding?
We actually get 3 quotes for. the
Okay, well, there we are.
herbicides, but-
That question's answered then.
Yeah, 'cause that's, pretty
okay.
competitive, around what we get, but yeah.
So what you're actually requesting of him then, I'm not disagreeing.
No,
with you.
understood.
I'm just, this is a relatively small amount of money. There are other areas where I think this is clearly a useful strategy. I'm just trying to make sure that it's not more work for us to try to contract this out over the next 3 years when we're talking about multiple vendors. It sounds like, right? It's not just one vendor for this whole
No,
line
yeah,
item.
it's a few. yeah,
Right.
Yeah.
That's why I asked piecemeal.
Okay, to try and execute some sort of a contract. I guess one of the questions you should be asking, Scott, if we can set the price, which I'm sure we can. I don't think that would be a problem, right? For
I guess
ARPA?
not. Yeah, I don't know why it would be.
Setting the price.
Yeah, over the next 3 years. We can't fix the price of pesticides, right?
I
That,
don't-
that's just gonna be what it is
Yeah,
annually.
Yeah,
Right.
no, I don't believe so. I can look
Okay.
into that, but
I guess I'm concerned about our ability to do this over 3 years because the price is gonna change every year. And I don't think that the vendor will probably be willing to allow us to sort of prepay in the
Lock in
same,
price.
or prearrange
Yeah.
a set amount,
Yeah, I'm simply thinking, I mean.
but
if-
1 year, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if there's contracted stuff that we do, we can do a multi-year contract, I would think, right? But outside of that, if it's just materials we're buying, in my mind, we should be able to purchase them fairly as needed. I mean, no different than if we would allocate $1 million to a project, it's gonna get drawn down, is my
Right.
point.
Yeah.
So
Right.
I envision it the same way.
I guess, and we don't need to sort this out here and now, but I guess my point is, and we're not going to sort it out here and now. But my point is that I suspect we probably won't be able to do 3 years worth of this item. There may be other things that are larger contracted amounts that we can play out over 3 years, but this is probably just a 1 year.
I
I
can
would
look
assume.
into it.
Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I think these are the one of the things, Vince, that you said.
Yeah.
You look at the cost.
Mhm.
and, it's one of those I've never
Yep.
used,
If we,
Well, it's used.
but not the amount that's budgeted.
Right. Although to that point, Scott, what are we treating? Are we treating like tree of heaven in the city? Are we treating tree of heaven in the city? And other invasive species like that?
Plant species you're asking?
Yeah,
I know we do a lot of it. A lot of the levee stuff needs done, all the rock areas. We utilize a lot of it in some of the parks as well. As far as species, that's not.
but the only reason I'm asking about tree of heaven is that it's a major driver for invasive, thank you, the spotted lanternfly, that's kind of taking over the area. And so, Adam, to your point, we could perhaps invest in an increased amount of pesticide if we had the time to get people out to treat specific species that are going to be causing problems in the city. So. but, That was all, Scott. Thanks.
Any other questions? Okay. Thanks, Scott. Here you see now Mrs. Frank on the motion to amend.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes. Let's go to the police department. It was just the next one that popped up. Page 30. Line item 2440785540 vehicle lease purchase. I'll make a motion to amend that to go from $265,000 to zero.
Second,
Motion in a second. So this is again, we can pay for these directly out of ARPA next year, chief.
Yes, just to
Go
make
ahead.
sure we're aware that we also did purchase 4 vehicles in 2021 and did a lease to buy. So 41,000 of that needs to go to that
Okay.
payment. We have 2 payments left on that.
Okay,
Two more payments
of
$45,000, so $82,000.
Yeah, correct.
82,000. Okay. So,
We're paying both of them in 2024.
all right.
What's that?
I'm
We're
gonna,
making both lease payments in 2024.
I'm sorry.
I misunderstood. We're doing one lease payment next year and one.
Yeah, yes, it was for
Okay.
5 years. So
Okay.
we have our last 2 payments.
so one payment's happening in December, one's happening in January? Or are both payments happening
No,
in
well,
20?
it'll need to be in the 2025 budget too, is the point.
I thought you were talking about like the value being different, sorry.
No, so yeah, 2024 and then 2025.
Okay, so we'll actually need to carry $82,000 in the 2024 budget in this line item. To
No,
cover
just-
the bills.
Just 41 to cover for 2024.
Okay, yeah, that's what I was confused about,
Yeah.
because I thought you were saying it needed to be 2. Gotcha. So it'll need to be 41. Okay. All right, I'll rescind that motion. I'll make a different motion to modify 2440785540 to reduce it from $265,000 to $41,000.
Second.
Motion and a second. Again, the cars that were being proposed to purchase, we can pay for out of rescue plan funding. And kind of the same thing that we were talking a little bit about with Scott. I think it would be wise of us to look ahead for the next couple of years and plan to purchase a few more cars over the remaining life of rescue plan funding. For the same thing, so we can kind of make the same approach the next couple of years.
Yes, sir.
Mrs. Katz.
Chief, is it possible for you to do a spreadsheet on the vehicles that you have and how?
I have one for you, ma'am, and I have one too. We're up right now. We have all our vehicles. Just to give you a little bit on that. Bear with me here a second. We have 7 vehicles. Yeah, right now, yep, I'm sorry. Appreciate your indulgence. We currently have, 7 vehicles in service that have over 100,000 miles on them.
And how much many miles do you usually say that's done?
Of the 7 vehicles, we're unable to get parts for 5 of them due to parts no longer being available. These vehicles also have suffered constant breakdowns resulting in cost repairs. So I'm hoping once our vehicle fleet is to where we need it to be, we can lower the cost in our repairs budget.
So how many vehicles do you need at this point in time?
So we're looking at least 7 or 8 vehicles that we could use.
All 7 need to be done within the next year and 2
If
years.
we can make that happen with ARPA, that would be great. And that would catch us up. Because we're working on a plan to get us back, get our fleet back to where it needs to be. And then I was talking to Council President Yoder there, we need to consistently keep rotating the vehicles, purchasing what I believe no less than 3 vehicles a year. And then continue that on as that keeps going, and then the vehicles will filter out.
That's why I said a spreadsheet, so we can all budget and know in our minds what you're gonna need from year to year.
Yes, I have that, so.
Because I would like to see that in other departments also, streets and parks, I would like to see
Yeah.
that you know where the vehicles and what you need vehicle wise, so it's budgeted.
I do have one that I can provide for you
Fantastic.
then, so.
Fantastic. That's helpful for our mental thing too, that, when you come to us, was like, you already told us you need that.
Yes.
Thank you, Mrs. Katz. Any other comments or questions? Okay, hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Franklin, the proposed amendment.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes. Motion to change passes 7-0. Chief, while you're there, a couple additional questions. To kind of Mr. Pelisi's rationale, looking at a couple of additional items in your budget that seem to be areas that gas and oil contract services. There are a couple areas that seem that where we normally don't spend all of that. Specifically contract services, what all is included in that? Because in my mind, I had a couple of notes about potentially reducing them individually, but to the point where we're not where it looks like we normally have been.
Well, right now, we haven't paid everything yet. So our
Okay.
biggest contract service bill, which is between 30 and 40,000, has not been paid yet.
Okay.
So we're coming up on the tail end. So a lot of our bills are going to be taken care of during this month of December.
Yeah. So I it looks like it's guesstimated to be around $56,000 at the end of the budget year. In my mind, I was thinking rather than carrying 77, maybe 60, but I wasn't sure if there was an anticipated item coming forward next year that's causing that larger increase than previous
There
years.
is, we did pick up a couple new subscriptions just because with technology where it's
Okay.
going, but the big one was with the records management system. That is
Okay.
going to be changing once we go to our new records management
Okay.
system. But I don't have that definitive numbers yet, so
But that's the rationale.
yes.
Okay.
There was There was also in City Hall operating last year, the cleaning of the police museum was in City Hall operating, and we moved that to the police department because it's all theirs
Okay.
and not shared equally. So we moved, I think it was like 6,000 or 7,000,
1,600. I believe it was 60.
6,800 from City Hall operating into contracted services in the police budget. So that's a little bit of the increase for this
Okay.
year.
Okay. And then gas and oil was another one. I know we're looking at being over this year, but I wasn't sure if we could minimize some of the delta between what we actually spent versus budget. So just wanted to ask if there was additional perspective on.
The issue is just how much gas we need. It's, depending what the cost of gas is gonna be, and then how much utilization is from the department. There's a lot of variables in place there.
Okay. I'm gonna leave those alone for now. Thank you both very much. Mr. Mackey.
Sorry, could we stay with the police here
Yes,
for just a moment? Yeah. While we're on the ARPA conversation, and again, I apologize for not getting this stuff to you
Oh, no worries.
to run through UHY, but it seems to me that there are, I don't know, somewhere in the neighborhood of $156,000 worth of stuff that we could purchase with ARPA funding still, those being uniforms, initial issue, firearms and ammunition, support equipment. And obviously we want to run those by UHY. I just can't imagine that those things would be a problem. So
in addition to the couple of things that we just talked about, there's a couple of additional ARPA items that UHY informed me are compliant, but I was not aware from the data given to me by the chief, like the support equipment, computer equipment, for example, and then Assistant Chief Lucas. I want to do a second verification on a couple of additional nuggets that I didn't have before.
right.
So my point in saying that is, if others have items that I've identified that they are interested in paying for out of ARPA, let's get those confirmed by early next week, and then we can knock those out.
I will get those to you.
Yeah.
I mean, because I have some other ones here
Yep.
too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, in my mind, there's, and again, to your strategy with the pesticides potentially,
Yep.
Again, could you talk to me about the firearms and the ammunition, the shelf life of those sort of things? Is that something that we could purchase 2 years worth of?
Absolutely, for ammunition and some of the paraphernalia that goes along with the firearms. In our firearms budget too, that also constitutes our less lethal ammunitions as well. So we have simunitions, which is essentially a paint round that we use for training purposes. And
Right.
then we have other less lethal options that we have to keep munitions for as well. So.
Okay. Well, yeah, I want to definitely put a pin in
Yeah.
a lot of those things, because again, that's somewhere in the neighborhood of $150,000 just for this year. If we talk about doing 2 years worth, now we're, so.
Yeah, and again, I mean, I'll fully sit here and admit, a handful of these changes are not really large nuggets in the grand schemes of a $28-some million budget, but when we kick this off, and outside of the debate on what we should or shouldn't do with the tax increase, gutting to $500,000 is only around $450,000, and so a $17,000 savings here, a $20,000 savings here is going to add up quickly to that rate. Is my point.
Not arguing
Yep.
with that. I'm just saying there's more here
Yep.
that we can cut off the bottom line.
Yeah,
So,
on board.
yeah. Okay.
On board. Thank you both.
Yes.
Those were the only ones I had for there. Is any questions for the police department or other proposed changes in their budget? Mrs. Katz.
Chief, why isn't there anything in for radio maintenance contract?
Since we purchased the new radios,
You don't need a contract with any of that anymore?
we don't need the funding for that number.
Okay, I just,
Yep.
question it. That's all.
Okay.
And while we're in between,
Yeah, go ahead.
I didn't have anything more for the police department. No, I just wanted to make a statement. Just in case some people are wondering the logic behind this is that, we only have so much time to use the ARPA funds, otherwise we lose them. So what we're looking at is as many qualifying purchases that are non-perishable or lesser perishable items that we can purchase ahead of time, speculating that, of course, the costs are going to increase in the next couple of years. So if they have a longer shelf life and we can buy them in bulk right now, of course, and we were able to, then let's do it. I just wanted to clarify that in case anybody was wondering why we're asking these questions or what the agenda is, what our prerogative is here.
Any other questions? Ms. Mealy?
Well, then if I can take us away from the police budget here for a moment.
Sure.
Mr. Livermore, could I ask you to do me a favor between now and next week, if possible? Yeah, I know. It doesn't actually need to be between now and next week, but it would just be helpful to have the information as part of the budget and American Rescue Plan Act funding discussion. I don't know what the replacement timeline is on a bunch of our parks equipment, but I suspect that a lot of it's coming up fairly soon. I'm thinking about Brandon, Los, Youngs Woods, and Shaw Place.
All of my park equipment should be in capital projects capital projects. So I'm trying to run to 15 years on a lot of my mowers right now. Some.
Oh, no, I'm not talking about that equipment. I'm talking about the playground equipment.
Oh.
Yeah.
Swing sets.
A lot of our playground equipment is looking a little beat.
Shabby.
And I don't know, I know that all of that equipment also has a 15 to 20 year shelf life. And when we're talking about things that we can take out of ARPA and not wind up holding the bag for here in a couple of years when we should be replacing the equipment, I'm thinking of the bigger ticket items. I'm thinking of replacing the equipment at 3 or 4 parks, replacing the playground equipment at 3 or 4 parks. So that we don't need to build it into our capital projects budget, which is way into our capital projects fund, which is where I think otherwise we should be putting money for the replacement cost. But in my experience, Derek, you were also part of the playground at Cochrane. We're looking at about $300,000 to replace equipment at any of our parks, correct?
Probably. I mean, playground equipment's expensive.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of liability there. Yeah. So we're looking at $350. It just seems like something if the equipment is close to its expiration date or more likely past it, that we should be looking at as well.
I think our newest playground, I wasn't here, but I think it's Memorial. If I'm not
Yeah,
wrong.
yeah, and Memorial's pretty new. That's
Yeah.
maybe 3 or 4 years old.
Yeah, I can look into past of when they were put in, see the lifespan of them and,
Yeah,
Yeah,
I
looking
think
back.
we did Newberry Park while I was on council. So that's probably less than 15 years old, but I can't recollect any other parks equipment that we've installed during my time on council. So, which is 14 years.
When was that started? I can't
We just did
remember.
Lowe's.
What did we just do at Lowe's? We replaced.
Oh, yeah. That's newest.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay.
Lowe's, yeah.
Yeah,
Lowe's is the newest, sorry.
I figured that we'd done some of it, but I wasn't sure if we'd done all of it. And that was real beat.
Yeah.
But Los was one of the focal points of that 2005
Right.
parks plan that we did. So, and we did also get a lot of funding from DCNR for pocket parks after that. Yeah. But anyway,
Right.
I think that would be an aid to the discussion on what we should be using American Rescue Plan Act funding for, so that your staff is not trying to piecemeal together solutions to equipment that's end of life for the next couple of years when we can't afford to replace it. Thanks. That's everything.
All right. Last one that I have, I'll go to page 17, finance and purchasing. I am gonna make an amendment to change the salary line item, which is where the grants position is housed based on what I'm seeing. So I'm gonna make a motion to reduce line item 232051010 from $140,015 to $65,015, which is a reduction of $75,000. Is there a second?
Second.
Motion and a second. So that's eliminating the proposed grants position, and I'm not proposing that because it's a terrible idea. I personally disagree on the grant writing aspect of it myself, but outside of that, I understand the logic of it. I would like to see us re-RFP this year, our lobbying contractors. I think they're up anyway. I could be wrong. But I would like to make sure that we do another effort to include compliance there, and really push that before we make the decision to bring any of that in-house. That's the rationale of that specifically. I think that can potentially be accommodated. I believe that used to be the case. I could be wrong, but
I don't think that most of our
okay.
grants reporting has ever been done through
Okay.
our consultants.
I
It doesn't mean that
could
it
be
couldn't,
yeah.
but if we, yeah.
Yeah, so motion and second, any other comments or questions on that individual item? It's something that a lot of us have kind of chatted about. Ms. Mealy.
I think I agree with you on the position with some reluctance. I do think that part of a planning department in the long run is a grants writing and or management element that's actually within the city. And I have wanted to see that happen for quite a while. I am nervous though that it really won't be feasible for us to expect one person to both write grants and manage grant reporting, because I think those are two dramatically different responsibilities, and that the same individual wouldn't necessarily have, be able to utilize all those skill sets effectively. That said, yeah, I don't know. Honestly, when I was going back and forth in my mind, thinking about funding the position, there was a part of me saying, well, if it's police grants reporting that we're talking about, should we try to cut an officer and then switch that out with the grant position? No one else seemed to be a fan of that.
Yeah.
But I was trying to figure out, if the management aspect is really important, where can we make a cut elsewhere in the budget to fund a new hire there? And it didn't seem like there were really a lot of options. Derek, this isn't, I guess this is not, it's certainly not me, and I don't think that it's any of us saying that we don't think that having some
Correct.
grant making thing, element within the city budget is a fail. I think we just need to try and figure out if there's another way we can fund it where we get a little more bang for our buck than hiring a person in to do it.
Correct.
And if somehow or another that is something that we can either hire, increase one of our existing consultant contracts, or hire a consultant who could do that for us and at least kind of help us figure out a system for how to handle the reporting within the city. That might be a more efficient way to work it in.
Yep.
Anyway.
Absolutely. And I'll say the same thing. I went back and forth on this one myself. I probably more so on the back end compliance piece of that. I lean personally thinking that a lobbyist that's doing this full time is going to be more effective than bringing that in-house personally. But again, I think it's a decent idea. I would like to explore a different route before we bring that in-house formally is all. So you're saying, I think you're saying the same thing.
Yeah.
Any other comments or questions on that proposed change from other members? Mrs. Katz.
You and I have had this discussion, and it was like the same thing that was saying that I felt. It's, I've always felt grant writers are worth their weight in gold. But grants have gotten more complicated, and you need to have someone that's going to oversee them, which is an entirely different situation. So, I mean, every department has done grant writing, police department, streets and parks, fire department. And it takes time out of what their people are in their office to do that. And to have somebody that's hired for that, I think that would take the burden off of those departments that they're always looking for grants. And have one person that's in charge of that, I think would be a benefit to all departments. But like you said, Adam, our lobbyists are there, and are we using them to the fullest? I don't know. It's a catch-22. So.
Any other Mayor Slaughter, please. Sorry, you look like you were getting ready to, go ahead.
I'll just say we do, I mean, we utilize Delta now. It's a lot. And for example, Captain Taviano, and our police department with the recent grant we have, he's spending a lot of time. I mean, Delta does what they can in regards to compliance and things, but it's a lot. And so we do have officers, we have other employees, and it's just becoming, it's a huge deal. And so, you know, the management oversight of the grants, it's a lot. I mean, you can say something, yeah, if you want.
That's what I was saying. There's too much time for it to be taking the manpower out of those departments.
Right.
To do this and to oversee it correctly. And Lord help us if a mistake is made.
Correct. That's correct. And with the volume of grants that are now going through the city, you're putting yourself at a lot of risk by not having someone focusing and managing those grants. Delta does do your grant writing for you, and they do some reporting, but that doesn't help with how it works in the city system and getting things reconciled and to them and organized and the way you account for it in the system. Unfortunately, the state wants it one way one time and a different way the next time. So your internal people are not focusing on their jobs. They're focusing on the internal piece of that grant compliance. There's a lot of requirements that come with federal and state grants. You have an $8 million earmark coming your way. $8 million. If you make a mistake, that's very costly. So we're just trying to build the internal system for you to be successful with all these grants. And as you continue to look, as the mayor alluded to earlier, there are a lot of opportunities out there for you. And as you continue to bring those opportunities in, somebody's got to be managing it because your current staff don't have the capacity.
I think it's got to be a two-way street. You have to present stuff to the lobbyist, what we're after and what we're looking for, but then the grant person would take charge of what's going on with that. So it's got to be worked hand in hand. And, you know, to me, I think it would be very beneficial all the way around.
So our hope was that if we had somebody internal to do those things, that then the Delta contract, not the federal contract, but the Delta contract could be cut back to accommodate that. It's just, we weren't sure how that would play out in terms of timing for next year.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Mealy and then Mr. Biter.
You can go first if you want. My impression from you all was that the reporting element was not considered to be a full-time position in itself, right?
Compliance reporting on.
Right. But we think that all of that is, because I thought we were also looking at grant writing as one of the responsibilities of this position.
That's what you talked about that time.
So can you clarify that?
Because
Can you clarify the scope
Yeah.
of the proposed position? Because
I had understood that we were thinking this
Correct.
position was going from Mayor Slaughter, that we were thinking this position was going to pay for itself in grant monies earned.
and yeah, we're of the impression that it's half, like, I'll say 50-50. Maybe it's 40-60, whatever, but we're of the impression there's a slice of this job that is outward facing, writing grants, and a slice of this job that is inward facing, managing compliance.
Right, and I would
Is that
agree with
correct?
that. I think that would be, yes, and I think it would be fluid as we have this, you know, if it becomes, I mean, right now, our key component we talked about is internally is sort of the compliance piece. It's a lot right now, as Tracy was saying, when these are coming in, we have a lot, we're being inundated, which is a good thing with grants, but it's that piece that, you know, when they ask us for, you know, whatever report, then we have to generate that. And one of us right now have to generate it. And that's just a lot. So I think once we sort of get our arms wrapped around the position, it can include, yes, the grant writing portion of it. But I think first and foremost, right now, what we're being absolutely swamped with, and again, it's in a good way because we are getting a lot of grants, but it's also time consuming, is the compliance, reporting, et cetera, on that side.
I guess what I'm asking is, that sounds to me like primarily a clerical thing.
I mean,
It's monitoring.
yeah, it's Yeah, it's someone that needs to know what they're doing. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Then, yeah, and if we're thinking of that as a full-time responsibility, then I guess I was trying to figure out if we could save some sort of money by combining the current part-time position in the finance department with responsibilities on this level, but doesn't sound like that's a possibility. So then, okay, yeah, then I say we try to see if we can do it through Delta or, yeah, okay. Sounds.
Can I give you an example of the type of things that's happening? So for instance, we have UHY that manages the ARPA contract, but the mayor does the reporting. Because you can't, as a consultant, do the reporting on behalf of the entity. So they'll sit on the phone with him and do it, but that's a responsibility of the city, not of Delta or not of UHY at that point. So those are the kind of things that are happening when you have a consultant. They can only do so much for you, and they're not in your system, working in your systems.
I
don't know. Any other comments or questions? Oh, I'm sorry, Mr. Biter.
No, that's quite right.
My bad.
What I would like to see with this position, we talked about it a couple of weeks ago. If it is something that we are going to decide upon, the suggestion that you had made, Tracy, that I was very fond of was, instead of putting this in one specific department and pulling that salary from, was allocating it as we do with IT across departments, because they will be doing work for all departments, some more heavily than others at times, obviously with the police and so on, but then with community development as well. So if we can make that happen, I think it might be a little bit better use of that position as well.
Any other questions? All right, so go. Oh, sorry.
I would just say that I think maybe we should be thinking about this for another week after the discussion that we've had and whether or not, right?
Is that the consensus? Sure,
I
I'll
think
rescind
so,
that.
yeah.
I'll rescind that motion then. That's fine. Okay. So those were the ones that I had that I think a lot of us had kind of initially discussed. Let me do some quick math. So we've taken a net of $124,000 out of the budget between increases and decreases, which is probably about what, quarter of the way to where we came into this tonight wanting to go. There's a couple of additional things, like I'd said, that there's some additional just verification after learning a few things tonight on. And I think there's a couple other ones. Go ahead.
Do we hit the fire department tonight?
Yeah, that's one of them.
Yeah.
So there's the support equipment in fire department, support equipment, police department, computer equipment and police department that I was informed by UHY that are eligible for ARPA. But from talking with each of them tonight, there were a couple of little intricacies that I was not aware of that I want to double up on to make sure. So, but right there, between those three is another $107,000, for example. I know there's a couple other ones that others had mentioned about ARPA as well. Mr. Pelisi.
Yeah, no, I totally agree where you're coming from. I understand. The big ticket items.
Yep.
So, and I'm gonna hold off on my questions and recommendations for this evening. But I will be reaching out to all the department heads so I could hopefully sit down and go over each one of these one at a time. So we don't continue to hold everybody up and hopefully get some clarity as far as the budget requests and the figures that accompany them. So I know they're all going to be looking forward to that. Scott, I see you smiling. Yeah, buddy.
All right. Any other proposed changes to the budget at this time? I know there's a few more we'll probably make next week for sure. After some additional questions, confirmation on some things, that kind of stuff. Does anybody have any other ones though for this evening? Miss Mealy.
I don't actually have any additional motions to make, but I did have one quick request once again of Scott Livermore back there. Scott, we discussed, I think, back in mid-November during the budget sessions, the idea of how much we'd need to increase our line painting contract by to accommodate bike lanes. Is there a number for that?
Don't have that number, but it's eligible through liquid fuels
Okay,
for the bike and everything else.
okay, so we can pull it out of our liquid fuel surplus?
Yep.
Okay, I would still prefer to see that be a part of this budget if possible. Does that need to look like boosting the number in your budget and then it comes out of liquid fuels? I mean, does that need to look like a line in the liquid fuels budget?
Yeah.
Or a line in the liquid fuels budget that's a transfer to your budget? Oh, Tracy's.
Yeah.
It just goes straight
Yeah.
to liquid fuels.
Yep.
Okay.
That's
Great.
what right now, like, last year we did, I usually do the whole city. Obviously this year, I think I held off due to the late winter we had last year, but that comes strictly out of liquid fuels as well.
Okay.
So what you were asking was the bikes and stuff, that is all liquid fuels eligible, the trails.
Okay,
Yeah.
so if we put in maybe $15,000 as an initial, assuming that's probably significantly high, but that
Yeah.
won't leave you underfunded.
Yeah.
Okay, got it. Okay, then I'll look to do that next time. Just wanted to see if you'd figured it out. Thanks, Scott.
Any other questions, proposed changes? All right, Mrs. Franklin, the main motion in first reading for item 12.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes on first reading 7-0. Item 13, Mrs. Frank.
An ordinance of the city of Williamsport, county of Lycoming, in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, fixing the tax rate for all city purposes for the year 2024 in first reading.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Second.
Motion and a second. Mayor Slaughter, anything to add for the tax ordinance? So this is the tax ordinance to align with the proposed real estate tax rate in the proposed budget. Currently sits at 1 mil. Again, I think we've kind of outlined a number of opinions and approaches on the proposed tax increase. I would suggest we pass it as is, and then based on how far we get next reading, we can make that final adjustment as we see fit in second reading.
Good.
Any other comments or questions? Ms. Mealy, you had your hand? No? Okay. Oh, sorry, that wasn't me being a jerk or anything. You were.
I shouldn't.
Sorry.
say it that way, but I didn't think it was funny. I was like, oh, no.
All right, Mrs. Franklin, the motion for item 13.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy.
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 14, Mrs. Frank.
Resolution to amend agreement for naming rights of Bowman Field.
Is there a motion and a second?
So move.
Motion and a second. Mayor Slaughter, one more time, sir.
Yes, good evening, President Yoder, Vice President Katz, members of council administration. What you have for you is a resolution to amend the naming, and it's simply due just to the name from Muncie Bank to Journey Bank, and they were acquired, and now it's Journey Bank. There's no change to the agreement at all. There's no financial, the agreement is not up. This is just simply reflecting the name change of the bank from, again, Muncie Bank to Journey Bank. This was reviewed in finance, and there's also no dollar, there's no cost to the city for them to do the name change update, and it was reviewed in finance.
Thank you, sir. Ms. Mealy.
This
That's it?
was reviewed in finance, but not
That's
for any great reason. So, yes, we had no concerns about this item. I think Randy did ask when the dollar amount would be up for review, and it seems to me that it's perhaps next year or something like that. that the
2025 or
negotiation will
24?
be. Was it 20? I was thinking it was 2024, but I think you said you've been approached by the bank to potentially extend the existing agreement.
Yeah,
which
there's a
was-
clause in there. We're in the middle of it right now. They can extend it. They can make a proposal to extend. And so in January, I hope to have that consideration before council if it's something we want to consider. I forget when it's exactly when it's up, but I can check that.
Yeah.
Thank you, Ms. Mealy. Any other comments or questions? Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. We'll move to item 18. Two certificates of appropriateness, one for 761 West Third Street, one for 730, 732 West Third Street. Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Skip anything out of the ordinary or anything?
One was a replacement of an existing porch where they'll be using materials to more modern materials, but it will look like the existing porch. And the other one is a paint color for replacement windows that were being proposed. In particular, the replacement windows were necessary, as I stated before, for life safety issues.
Thank you very much, Skip. Any comments or questions on these certificates of appropriateness? You can see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Thank you, Skip.
Thank you.
Item 19, except for filing Veterans Memorial, August 2023, public safety meetings from April and June 2023, controllers report from September 2023. Is there a motion in a second?
So moved.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any comments or questions? Here you can see none. Mrs. Frank on the motion.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Ms. Mealy,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Item 20, announcements. Our next regularly scheduled city council meeting will be next week, Thursday, December 14th, 7 PM, right here at Trade and Transit 2. I'll announce that we had an executive session on November 15th related to items of personnel. I really hope city council doesn't kill me about what I'm about to say, but we will also be having a police pension meeting after this. That I forgot about. So that's why I make the comment that I make there. Other upcoming meetings, Tuesday, December 10th, 11:30 Public Safety, 1 PM Finance, 2:30 PM Public Works, Wednesday, December 11th, 9 AM Economic Revitalization, 11:30 Redevelopment Authority, and then next Thursday, December 14th, 7 PM City Council meeting. Any comments? Item 21. Any comments from members of City Council? Any comments from members of the administration? Mr. Livermore. Couldn't get enough. Just kidding.
It's
Welcome back.
I'm just tomorrow night, talking to Sean out at Brandon Park. They're doing the light thing. It's already going to be lit up, but Melissa Hogg's team will be out there doing her dance. They'll have a few food vendors, some other vendors going on. I don't know. There may be some rides, but I'm not 100% sure on that, but that's happening tomorrow.
Thanks for the reminder. That's an amazing event. My wife and I loved going to it before I was on council, before we had a kid. It just gets better and better. Hope to see a lot of people there. Let me also acknowledge quickly, the Newberry Community Partnership had their tree lighting last night. Scott, thank you for your work again and supporting them. Mayor Slaughter, thank you for supporting them as well. They got a great community over there. They got a good thing going. It's always a joy. So,
If I may, real quick,
yes.
while Mr. Livermore's at the podium. Now would be the time to probably put Christmas lights for Brandon Park on the budget. I don't know if they'd be an ARPA expense maybe, but they're a non-perishable item and it looks like those are the old screw-in bulbs from the 60s.
They are, but they're all updated LEDs.
Okay.
I just had that all switched, a lot of them switched over.
Yeah, and the wires won't break down as quickly as the
Well, as long as they,
Yeah.
as long as they stay in there, they tend to get unscrewed and walk away and we find them, but.
Any other comments thank you, Scott. Any other comments from the administration? Any comments from members of the public? Yep, come up, state your name and address for the record. And you have 3 minutes and welcome, sir.
Thank you very much. I appreciate the council for letting me speak tonight. I'm going to introduce myself. I'm Francis. I have the Clothier's Men's Store in downtown Williamsport. I had surprising news on Tuesday that a customer came to my store, said they were going to close the downtown streets on West Fourth Street. And I was immediately shocked and I called the mayor and I says, hey, can you tell me what's going on? So he finally got back to me and he spoke to me and he told, well, they're going to be closing the street. I says, well, can't you possibly suggest, you actually suggest, can you possibly make it a block or 2 blocks down the street or pick a different time or a different day? It just, you pick it on a Saturday, which is three important weeks before Christmas. And he says, well, I told Jason Fink, and Jason Fink's supposed to give to all the retailers and tell that this is happening. Well, then I spoke to Jason Fink today, and he told me that he didn't get a hold of him until about in the afternoon on Tuesday, but I spoke to the mayor on Tuesday morning. So I went to talk to all the retailers, and not one of the retailers knew that this was going to happen on Saturday, that they're going to close the street for 3 hours, which is the most important time of Williamsport, from 11 o'clock till 2 o'clock. But after I talked to some of the retailers, they told me that there's planned to having a park and shop night, which is a day, which is from 10 to 4, and there's 3 or 4 stores are involved with it. So then that they're gonna get lost out on all that. So then then Mayor Slaughter says, well, the streets and parks are going to be on standby. So when the protest is over, immediately the thing's going to be opened up. Well, last week I was downtown. I work downtown every day. I seen some of the barriers. They're just ready to be put up. That was last weekend. And here there was a mistake. They thought it was supposed to be last weekend. Here it's this weekend. So there's a communication between mayor and the streets and parks. Are they really going to be on standby on Saturday? And the next thing is the police presence. Or the police presence are going to be in the peaceful protest that's going on downtown? Are they going to be on every block, whatever? And then the social media. Everybody knows about social media. There's two types of things for social media. You got the good, you got both types. You got the Palestine, you got the what's called the was it the Israels and everything. So you don't know what's going to happen. Are they going to be arguing, screaming, and that kind of stuff? So then there's, how is the downtown people, especially the small businesses, are going to recoup from those for that whole day? That's it's a big loss for these small businesses. This is the most important time of the downtown businesses. The mayor should be right with the downtown people. He should be right here. So what can we do for you? He should know that you never close the street, especially 2.5 weeks before Christmas, 3 weeks. That's the most important part. He just said, well, let's talk to some of the downtown retailers. What do we think about things? That's my most important concern, is trying to keep the downtown thriving. That's the whole city is about. If you lose the downtown, I don't know what's going to happen to Williamsport. I mean, they say, well, we'll just have bars or whatever. That doesn't help the people in downtown. Now, I get a lot of people from out of the area, all across, and everybody knows that because they love to come to my store because they have a variety of different sizes and everything. So,
Thank you, sir.
You know, and the only thing I'm just telling you is that I heard the protesters were thinking about parking at the Jersey Shore State.
Sorry, your time is up, sir.
Okay, thank you. I just want to
Duly noted, and I very much appreciate you coming.
Okay, thank you very much.
And representing the downtown.
I know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Any other comments from the public? Any comments from the questions from the news media? There is none. All right. Motion and a second for adjournment.
So moved.
All in favor?
Aye.
But was late, of course, so I didn't dare. It was like walking out of the restaurant, like, I should stop.
Yeah, so like, it's honestly, like, it's crazy. I remember
I can't believe I left my phone at home. I really can't.
I know, I thought it was, yeah, whatever. Yeah. It's all done.
Hey, that's, look, that's.
Great.
Yes. we get receipts. They are all in her email, because she never asked them for it. We have them all.
What's this?
The receipt, she has access to her receipt, she is in our office all the time, she asked, we have everything organized, it's all scanned and electronic as well.
I
She
think,
didn't have it.
I think there's a problem. That's my control.
It's not our.
But it's a problem. It's a problem.
One thing I did want to say to you is, as you add or subtract pensions, it changes every department because the pension. Is an allocated, it's one. So I just want you to be cognizant of that. And that's like, so let's say we have 100 OE employees, everybody gets $10,000. Because they get 19, now I gotta give everybody 10,000. Then they don't know, regardless of how much employee they are. So we just take time to put that all those expenses. So. Yeah, just, you know what I mean, like, it's not, like, next Thursday, you're not having, I don't know. It's not gonna happen. So you already have. Yeah, well, because I can't, like, you know what I mean, like, moving things and changing benefits and doing.
Hey, Janice. Janice.
Yes.
How are you? Good. Join in right here. There's my girlfriend.
I couldn't say, honey.
Stop to the shop. Candy from your husband.
God, thank you. Thank you so much. Ah,
How have you been getting around?
we're getting there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Day at a time.
Exactly. Yeah, at least I got answers about the problem. And now I deal with it. And mentally, I've been able to flip it into a positive. And that's what I'm doing. And it's been a little while. Yeah. You know, you go into those things, on me. You know, no, I had a problem with my client. And what it did, I didn't just send it to my desk. It's hard, you know, and the operation was like a 9-hour operation, and no guarantee that I didn't come out. So it's okay. We will figure this out.
Carry a gun and just. This is in fact.
Heather.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I got the seat over here. You sure? Yeah. How you doing? I can possibly be for some reason I thought. Yeah. It usually is, but still. I ended up in the school. I remember coming through, but like I thought she was like, he's gonna sit right there.
Sure.
So I called out. Yeah, so it's all. Well, you know, I just.
Oh, yo, I'm sorry. It's all right. So I resigned. Okay. From my job. Okay. Your new job. This job, not the government solution. Yes. Oh, I resigned. Okay. All right. Got it.
So Friday's my last,
Okay. Well, that's awesome.
and I just. Good. And I just told Adam, I don't plan on next Thursday being your last meeting, budget meeting, because with all these changes, there's no way this budget.
No, I thought you were gonna say-
Thursday, because it has too many number of issues to have.
Okay, got it. Right. Okay. Got it. Well, that's okay. Hopefully
John.
we get at least a quorum here.
Did you decide?
But, I think maybe we can do a scene.
I just didn't know, maybe we wanted to.
We're all here.
Yeah, I like this meeting.
My wife does.
Wow, the meeting you had is much longer than the meeting that.
Yeah. All right, you guys ready? All right. Hey, Eric. Chris.
I like how Adam just, dropped this one on us while we were on here. Adam, we're live.
I'm gonna talk to Tracy real quick. I'll be right back. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, you go. I'm not telling you to wait up.
It's like Diamond Ditch.
All right, we're live? Yes. All right, I will call the meeting to order. This is our police pension board meeting. We have a short agenda. First item on the agenda is approval of meeting minutes from March 16th, 2023. Is there a motion and a second?
So moved.
Motion second. Any comments, questions on the minutes? Hearing seen none. Mrs. Frank on the meeting minute motion.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Sharaj,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes 7-0. Had to do my math here for a second. Quick. Item 2 is a pension for Jeremy, Brown. Ms. Shrimp, care to speak to the pension in front of us at all? Can you turn the mic on?
So Jeremy was with the force for roughly 20 years, retired as an agent. He had not reached the retirement age yet, so he actually stopped working back in February. Was it February? Yeah, I believe it was February. And then this coming February, he will be reaching age 50, so he will be able to start collecting his pension.
Okay.
So we send the compensation data onto Muck and Hop. They did the calculation and came back with what is presented to you tonight.
Okay. Any comments or questions on the item, the pension calculation, et cetera? Everybody good? Okay. Mrs. Frank, on the approval of the pension calculation for Jeremy Brown.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Sharaj,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes. Item 3 is a drop pension for Mr. Fred Miller, Ms. Shrimp.
Yes, so Fred is nearing retirement. He's got 5 years to go. So he is at the point where he can enter the drop and thus contribute what he would be receiving in a pension to his drop fund. And then in 5 years, he'll stop working and he'll get that money back with interest. So this is just a way to encourage officers to remain employed past the point that they could technically retire.
Thank you, Molly. Any comments or questions related to the drop pension for Fred Miller? Good. Here you see none. This is Frank on the motion for Fred Miller.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Mr. Sharaj,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz.
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, motion passes. Item 4, any related items from members of the police pension board?
Anything, Mr. Sir?
Okay. Motion a second for adjournment. So
I'm
moved.
sorry, Adam.
Yep.
We still need to vote to approve Heather as the pension board, pension administrator. Currently, that's Tracy Rash. And I
Okay.
apologize if I didn't mention that.
That is not on the agenda. Nor do I need to suspend the rules or anything? Or can I amend the agenda? Okay.
Okay,
Make a motion
apologize.
to amend the agenda to add an item to approve Heather Jacoby as a replacement for Tracy Rash. Is there a motion a second for the amendment?
So moved.
Second, motion a second, motion a second to open discussion on the item.
So moved.
Second.
Motion a second, is there any, I don't think, is there any like documentate, what's this look like? Is it
So-
just?
There will be a document that we need to send to Mock and Hop, so then they will confirm that Heather will be the authorized signer on all of the pension calculations. When we submit data for the MMO, Heather will be signing off on that. So it's basically the official approval of anything that occurs with the pension.
Okay.
Okay,
Go ahead.
and also that one of the exceptions is because this is an unexpected or emergency, because with Tracy leaving by the end of the year, that way Heather can pick it up after the first of the year.
Okay.
And especially to get the pension stuff out.
Okay. Any comments or questions?
Heather, were you aware that you were going to be doing this?
Yeah. Yes.
Okay.
10 minutes ago.
Hearing and seeing none, Mrs. Franklin, the motion to approve the change from Tracy to Heather.
Mr. Allison,
Yes.
Mr. Mackey,
Yes.
Mr. Pelisi,
Yes.
Mr. Bider,
Yes.
Sergeant Siraj,
Yes.
Mrs. Katz,
Yes.
Mr. Yoder.
Yes, it passes. Any related items? All right, motion is second for adjournment.
So moved.
Second, all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we're done.